I met a gypsy. Gypsy Tales, Get Excited Tea, shipping now by John Brendan.
Didn't expect the drink. I appreciate it.
Well, I figure that this is a fucking hell of a story.
Hopefully.
I don't know about hopefully. Cheers, mate. Paul Everest. Welcome to Gypsy Tales.
Cheers.
Have a quick little sip of this. And we're on. Just like that, we're gonna dive into the mind of Paul Everest. One of the more interesting, maybe like stories and characters that I've kind of come across in my travels across this little world that we're in.
I'm good to be here, and I've seen your show, and it's good that there's a moto podcast. I think it's of this caliber, so glad to be here.
No, I appreciate it, dude. We've been talking about this for a long time. Like, pretty much since I started this podcast, I knew that at some point you were going to come on. We've spoken about it for a long time. And that, I feel like they always happen at the right time. And it's definitely cool to get you in at the moment. And it's like, I know you're a dude, like we've had some like weird conversations on Messenger about like just a bunch of completely unrelated shit about like fucking weird physics and, you know, different sort of different shit. So it's going to be cool to have a bit of a sparring partner like that. I'm
really, as I said, pleased to be here. And I like multiple topics. Like motocross has always been a big part of my life, but yeah, the more time goes on, the more I get interested in everything. And deep conversations always been something that I go to.
Yeah.
So I enjoy it.
So you sent me some notes about some different things, and I remember reading that you guys grew up in Papua New Guinea, but that fully refreshed my memory, and that's probably as good a place to start as any. What was the reason you guys even started, like you grew up there?
Yeah, so my family's been up there for 3 generations. My grandmother, excuse me, and my grandfather went up to Rabaul, which is like...
Pull this a little bit closer. Yeah.
Sorry. So Rabaul is like an island off the coast of Papua New Guinea, which was where the Japanese housed their main military and navy during the war.
Yeah.
So that my grandparents lived there for a while, and they moved to a coffee plantation in the highlands of Papua New Guinea, and that's where my mum was born. And essentially, we just lived there in a coffee plantation, went to school with American missionary kids, and got introduced to BMX. And it was like, I think it's probably one of the greatest bit of luck I had actually growing up in a third world country. And just, it's like another universe. It's nothing like Australia at all.
Yeah. So what was that experience like then, if you say that it was something that was lucky? Like, what would you attribute luck to in that situation?
I think it's like a perspective on life, you know. I think, especially at that time too. So it was, and it still is a very exotic place. Like it's still...
It's the jungle.
Yeah, it is, you know. And just seeing, like, or just growing up as a child in another place and coming to Australia. Like if people say to me, where am I from? I say I'm from Papua New Guinea. Like I still don't feel like I'm an Aussie as such. And just seeing poverty, seeing like... just a different way of life. And I think it was a very valuable stroke of luck for me, and it sort of shaped my entire future. I still wish I could go back and live there in many ways, but there's certain things about the world that mean you've got to be in a civilization. So that's probably the ultimate thing though, just the perspective of it and just the exoticness of it.
There's not many places in the world too where you can be white and be the minority.
True. In fact, I had lunch with my brother this morning, this afternoon, and we both had that conversation. Like the world seems so, about group identity at the moment, and we were kids, we just never even thought of that, and I think we were the minority when we look back, and it was just like race never played a part in that, and we still have all friends from back in those days now, and it was it's almost like I can't describe how much different it was to Australia. You know, just like I said, it feels like another universe. And just growing up with American missionaries as well in New Guinea, like you know,
So
like,
what was that like?
Yeah, so they were all mostly Americans, and
So essentially, like, can you explain like how that come about then for like the American missionaries in Papua New Guinea? Like, what's the kind of backstory?
Why the hell are they
there?
there?
Yeah.
Great question. So there's 900 languages in Papua New Guinea. It's got more languages than any place on earth.
Really?
And yeah, so these guys are sponsored by their churches back home, and they have to translate the Bible to each individual language. So it's a pretty big undertaking to do. So they would go and literally build an airstrip in some place that's hardly seen a white person, and or a helicopter pad. And then that family would move to that tribe, learn their language. So their kids would be the only speakers of that language outside of that valley. And then they would translate the Bible to that language. And then that would be, probably there would be maybe 500 families doing that.
Yeah, that's crazy.
The best people though, like really lovely people. They wouldn't swear. They're very well mannered and great human beings. Many of them are my friends to this day. So I mean, I'm more of an agnostic, I suppose, in terms of my worldview, so to speak. But yeah, friends to this very day.
Yeah, because I don't think people like have a general knowledge of how savage Papua New Guinea is. Like, that's actually one of the more, in terms of like native people, Papua New Guinea is one of the more savage tribal, I guess, like races, countries, like groups ever.
Well, yeah, it's certainly got a reputation for headhunting and so on. Like, there's photos of my grandmother has of like a dude just holding a head,
Really?
just near where they lived. Like Michael Rockefeller, the famous American family, he was hunted and killed and eaten.
Really?
Yeah, in 1961.
Wow.
Yeah, so not a lot of people know that, but he was in a canoe, and they were actually paying the local tribes people in machetes to get them to fight for video. Like, they're trying to capture anthropological footage of like a tribe that's hardly ever seen the civilization, and try and get them to fight.
Yeah.
And there was a Dutch army essentially in place at that time, but they basically, he got sort of shipwrecked on his little canoe at one stage, and the locals just ate him. So
that's so heavy, eh? Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's like famous for cannibalism and just like pure savagery there.
well, yeah, I think civilization's full of savagery. Every race, every creed, every religion. It just so happens that PNG is just more recently come into the modern world, so to speak. So, but yeah, I mean, growing up there's amazing. Like, one of my best mates who's still up there, he's got footage of his drone flying over an enemy tribe, and they're shooting arrows at his drone. And I'm like, this is the best footage I've ever seen.
Sell this shit to DJI for sure.
Yeah, it could be, because I can't think of any other place where you've got modern technology interacting with primitive
Straight
armament.
tribalism,
Yeah, and it really is amazing watching this footage. You see these like warriors like pulling back on the arrows, and then these arrows like coming past the drone. And he's just such an interesting dude. I grew up with him, and they have to take their takings from the plantation to Leh, which is like the main city up there, and they have to wear bulletproof vests, MP5s.
Yeah, wow.
And like, he actually ordered a tank, and the Port Moresby or the PNG like import place, like, who the hell is this dude ordering a tank? And so in so doing, he got to meet all the kind of high brass of government, and they didn't let him get a tank. But yeah, he's just an absolute legend of a guy, and so many stories.
So what's he do up there now to like live there forever and stay there? Because I imagine, like, I'm not sure what the industry is, like what you would actually be doing there.
So his family had the coffee plantation across from ours.
Yep.
Yeah, so he's just recently moved to another island in a different industry, and he's a Kiwi by nationality, but he'll never leave PNG. He's like, yeah, he just wouldn't. I mean, he is an amazing individual, like business and everything else, but I just can't imagine him being
like
in Sydney or in Auckland.
World, yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, some of the stories he's got like are just incredible, and yeah, again, he just considers himself really lucky as well to have grown up there. And there's very few white plantations left. Like, I think there was like 30 coffee plantations at one stage. They called it green gold. And I think there's only like one or two led by expats still to this day. So, Yeah, times are changing.
Crazy history. Were the Dutch the first ones to colonize PNG?
Dutch, German, and you can tell by the churches.
Yeah.
Because every little place has a sharp building in the middle of it, where you come in, convince them of a different god, and then you take over, right?
Yeah.
So it's funny watching that sort of play out when those churches are all still there, but the local language, Pidgin English, is a mixture of Dutch, German, and English.
Yeah.
So depending on what part of the country you're talking about, it was
Yeah.
a different skew. And that's all quite recent,
We had, because we grew up in Cairns, and it's funny, like, we were the minority in, not in terms of the city itself, but in so many of the things that we did. Like, I played for Brothers Football Club, which was a black football club, essentially, and we had all these boys from TI, all these boys from PNG, and it was me and one other dude were the only white kids on this team for like 10 years. And yeah, like all the different languages that the boys spoke, and it was just, it was crazy to be a part of that. And it wasn't till I went to America and I just kind of realized that people don't associate Australia at all with having these like indigenous kind of population. It just seems like such an afterthought. Like if you think about America, you think about the Native American Indians, but like Australia, man, it's just such a forgotten or like an untold part of our history. And I took it for granted because I lived there, and it was probably the same thing for you, that it's very obvious when you leave and you come to Australia that like it just isn't a spoken about thing, which is kind of disappointing.
Yeah, it is interesting spending a lot of time in the States, which I know you have, and like the perception of what Australia is. And like people are like, oh, there's kangaroos everywhere.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
I mean, there actually is. Like, I live here in Berlin now too. We had a koala at my front door the other day, which, like just, it is that sort of, cliche. But yeah, with PNG and the locals, and the indigenous communities, they are so talented with sport, and
Crazy, dude.
Yeah, if they had more opportunity, they would run the game. And I think there's talk of Papua New Guinea entering the NRL.
That'd be sick.
Yeah, so the Kummels, they're called. So that won't be far away, and I think they'll be a damn good team.
Yeah, the thing that, like, we had a bunch of like Aboriginal Torres Strait PNG boys that were just like next level talented, but there's still such a tie to family in those communities that there's guys that would get like contracts with the Penrith Panthers, go down there, like full scholarship, full everything paid for, like you just got to stay here and like train, and then they'd last a week. And then book a flight and they go home. And they're just like some of the most talented dudes that you like. And there's other guys that make it to the NRL that came from our town as well. And they were just nowhere near as good as these other dudes. But there's still such like they're not removed from that tribal tight knit family, and it's still the way that they live. It's
a culture shock for them, like having to go into like a professional athlete scenario where you're eating and training and on repeat. I think that bridge will get gapped at some point. And just thinking about like in PNG, like even the BMX riders, a couple of the locals were amazing BMX riders. Like a friend of mine, Andrew Sarave, he's like a little Highlander, but his like calf muscles were like this, and he would just decimate all the top American kids, and I think he went to Worlds and like got in the top 10, this is like in 1988 or something like that. And so like when the conditions are right and they have the opportunity, they're unbeatable.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of like even just the Native American, the African Americans in America. It's just like they dominate fucking everything, man. It's just like not even close, eh? And it's crazy over there because they're like doing combines and stuff to where they're measuring everything. It's like vertical leap, their long, like static long jump, the 40-yard dash. They're measuring their bench press over X amount of weight, X amount of reps, and their time. It's just like, and the stats are just so definitive. It's like, you're white, you're shit. Like essentially, like you just don't see it.
Yeah, I think, like I was seeing an interview with someone recently who was saying like the worst player on the worst team in America who's on the bench, who's the last to be picked, is the most insanely good player at NFL or whatever, that like just to look at how good they are and they're the worst in the game is just, he realized he was never going to make it.
Yeah.
And just the level, like to have and live to eat and breathe that sport. And look at motocross now, like motocross is now at that level where these guys have to perform, on that level and be elite athletes. So it's probably been that way now for 10 years, but it's if you want to be a sportsman, you've got to invest everything you've got into it, and it's certainly a lifestyle that not everyone can handle.
No, that's for sure. So BMX was like the thing that was big over there for you guys.
Well, purely because these American kids needed something to do, and they were sponsored by their churches back home, who were quite wealthy. So you would go to the local BMX track. It's the most exotic BMX club in the world. It's in the highlands of Papua New Guinea. And so you would turn up on the track and there'd be GTs and Skyways and Haros and Redlines and Diamondbacks and Hutches, etc. And I remember there was like a bit of a turmoil where the local church found out how good the bikes were in Papua New Guinea for these kids that were meant to be in the exotic highlands of PNG, and why have they got all these amazingly expensive BMX bikes. So there was a little bit of drama involved with that, but it was what kids did. You didn't have internet. You didn't have.
Yeah. Because what year were you born?
I was 79. So so 80s. I was an 80s kid, and so growing up there, racing BMX was that mid 80s period, and in many ways, it was the beginning of
modern action sports, kind of.
Yeah, well, it was a golden era for BMX, and I'm a branding guy, so I learned all my branding from being a BMX kid. All those brands were so rich, as the ones I just reeled off, just the
Redline, Haro,
Mongoose,
GT,
so
Diamondback.
I remember thinking I got into branding without realizing it, because I wanted that bike. And later in life, my parents couldn't afford the top bike, so later on in life, when I was successful, I was able to go back and get revenge and buy those bikes, and I've still got a really cool little collection. And I think we were blessed with really cool brands, and that's what got me thinking about that, I suppose, in early days without realizing.
Dude, that's so true, because I was so influenced by my uncle Glenn made the Mud Cows movies, like the BMX film, mountain bike films. I'm not sure if you saw.
I have. Alan Hardy's told me all about it.
Yeah, right. So Mud Cows, man, that was my introduction into filming. And then we had Crusty Demons and The Great Outdoors and Terra Firma, and because my dad and his buddies would watch these films when we were kids. And so when I started filming, that's what people would always say, oh, where'd you learn how to film? And it's all this shit, all we've done is watch film our entire life. So it just seemed very easy for me to just make what I had already watched.
You're a product of your environment. In many ways, your life, you really will be guided by what you know, and you just fall into it. Or you didn't choose it; it chose you. And just watching the Crusty Demons. I remember sitting on a couch, and it must have been 96, and I just thought, that is the best thing I've ever seen, and I want to do that. And so that steered me towards my career in action sport, and just watching that footage, and I'm mates with John, Dana, and the guys, and it's I pinpoint that day as that's when it started for me,
What day was that?
Just watching the video online, not online, sorry, on a video, on the old cassette, So I must have watched it a million times, and Crusty Demons was it.
Man, we had one of my uncles used to bring that. He would talk about it oh, dude, Crusty 6 or Crusty 7 comes out next week, and I'll come over Friday night, and then I remember everyone in the lounge room's quiet, and everyone's there, and it's you pop the tape in, and it was a premiere in your living room. And I mean, this movie had probably been out for fucking year by the time it got to Australia, got to Platypus or whoever distributed it back then, and then got to Wayne Leonard Motorcycles, and then got in the VCR, and man, we just flogged those tapes out. It's all we did as kids.
I still have the first grey Crusty Demons video, and it's so flogged from that same reason. We just played it every song, every song. So I think a lot of people in our industry will share that same experience, and it was the golden era of motocross as well, in many ways, and every trick was just such a a no-hander, or it was so mundane, but it was the first time those things had been done.
You're just exposed to something completely new. And that's Matty, when we were riding MX Fun, they got this pretty big triple up this hill there, and Matty Mac was doing this big double foot can, and it's just we're all just like, oh, dude, that's so funny. And it's like, 15 years ago, if you could do a double-footed can off a 130-foot uphill triple, you're like one of the best riders in the world.
Yeah, it's just escalated so quickly, and yeah, like I wonder where FMX can go from here. You know.
Let's get this thing down real quick. There we go. When you look at, like you just mentioned, Alan Hardy, and it's like what he's done now in his career, and we'll probably get into the film side of Unit a bit later on, but like, man, you guys pretty much built Unit off these fucking insane video projects, and it's crazy when you think about Alan, and then you go all the way back to his influences, which was Mud Cows, and then he made his own adaptions films, and and then to see the work that he's doing now with that Parkway Drive film, it's just like,
yeah, you can literally draw a line from those days through to today, and yeah, it's so interesting seeing people in the industry who were around and where they're at, like yourself, and like it's amazing to see what places they've gone to and what's happening, and you're in charge of your life and your destiny, and it's good to see people staying in moto, and a lot of people have like moved away from moto because the industry is not as massive as it was, but like I can't leave. I'm never leaving, so I've had a bit of hiatus, but yeah, those stories are amazing, and it's just people who just put the hard work in and captured it, and I think I gave Alan his first job after Channel 9. He used to work at Channel 9, and so he would have all this cool footage, and then we would just sort of build some videos together, and that really created a lot of the groundswell for Unit to sort of become known. And it wasn't easy though. Like, videos were still, you had to go to the shop.
I was going to say, like, you needed to be a visionary to invest in videos at the time that you guys did. And dude, I remember like $500 unit checks for like video sponsorship for MX Nationals and shit. And it's like, it was it's funny too when people would say like, oh, the podcast just did so well so quick. And it's like, man, the fucking podcast, in the same way that Alan started by filming his friends for adaptions back in like 2004, 5 probably. It's like everything just starts. It's such a long grind, and it's like we've all been in this game for so long. And I remember trying to convince people back in 2006, 2007 when I first started filming that, like, man, I'm telling you, Facebook's going to be massive. Instagram wasn't out yet. YouTube wasn't even really a thing. Like, I remember all the first videos were on Vimeo that I did, and it's like, fuck, it's been a crazy long road to get to this point, and it ends up, it's only sort of nowadays that I'm thinking like, this was a career. Like, I'm a career dude at this.
Yeah, and you didn't know you'd end up here at the beginning, and I think that's how life goes. I think if you just dedicate yourself to something, and yeah, I love the expression, people don't have ideas have people, and I feel like so many of my friends who've been successful, they didn't start out thinking of where they'd end up, but they've gotten there through just persevering through the hard times, and just going for it, having a vision. And sometimes your vision is going to be slightly off of where you end up, but just setting goals and chasing dreams. Really, that's what we're all here for. That's why existence is existing. That's my theory.
Yeah, the thing too that you see with somebody that's successful, such a common theme, is that it's not a goal orientated thing. I think there is people that are successful in that, and I feel like real estate agents and stock market dudes, like, feel like there's a special category that's reserved for guys that are super motivated by money and like an end result, a goal, a house, a certain type of house, a certain type of car, that kind of shit. But I feel like the people that for the vast majority of people that are quote unquote successful, it was just this process that they just constantly invested in this process. And I think that for myself, I can attribute that, like, I just never got a job. Yeah. I just was like, I'll be poor until I figure it out. And it is what it is, because it's worth more to me to have the X, Y, and Z in terms of like my own freedom, and I'd rather be responsible for my own fuck ups and do things like my own way. But there was never a goal of like, I want to own this or I want to have that, and again, it's like the goalposts shift if you do set them. And if you live by something that, you know, a goal's just a mirage in the desert, really. And it's sort of, you know, no one's really ever told to really follow a mirage.
Well, yeah, and I think you just end up doing what you love, right? Like if you're smart enough to stay in what you love, and sometimes the path can lead you away from that, but if you do what you really enjoy, and like as a kid, I just loved art and I loved motocross, BMX, and so like creating a brand was the fusion of those things. So it just felt normal to do that, you know? And I feel like in life, you've just got to figure out what you enjoy and see if you can build your world around that. And it may not have like, you know, it might not be a high monetary income place to start, or like, you know, it might be something else. But if you don't do what you love, you're not going to enjoy life. So yeah, I think that's where you want to start, is like figuring out what you enjoy. And everyone's good at something.
Yeah.
No one's bad at everything, you know, so.
And the other thing too is like, you can get good at shit. Like where you start a thing is fucking nowhere near where you finish a thing if you do it for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, you know, 10. If you're in something for 10 years, it's like you can get to a point where you're so good at something that you don't even know you're that good at it, because you've just done it for so fucking long. Like I think about that in my own skill set when I look at like filming and editing. I can pick up any camera in the world. I can use all the editing software, you know, and it's like when I'm with a person that's new to it, that's when you really realize how far you've come. Yeah. Because at one point you were new to it. And I don't think people, I think that Sam Moore posted a quote the other day where he said that people underestimate what they can do in 5 years and overestimate what they can do in one.
Mm-hmm, true, I like it.
And I feel like if you are the person that can always invest in something for 5 years before you even take stock on your position in that thing, then you're probably going to do really fucking well. But if you're analyzing every 3 months where you're at, whether it's, you know, you start a podcast or you start a brand or whatever, at that, you know, not many people are good at shit straight away.
And just immerse yourself with people who are good at that stuff, and it rubs off on you, right? So like, I love going to the skate park, and
you can pull this close. It can move. Yeah.
In doing unit for many years, hanging out with all the top athletes, you'd go to like the skate park or the bowl, and some kids turned up to try and do a tail whip. And one of our top athletes who's on 100 grand is bothering to have 10 minutes with that kid to say, no, you put your foot here and you wait, and then you put your foot back on the pedal, not on the frame. And he went out of his way to show that kid that thing because he was that kid. And I love seeing that, you know, and I feel like skate parks don't get the sort of, I think maybe more so now, but, you know, like those are places where kids are learning, and it's the same across whatever it is you do, you know, I got good at graphic design because I sat next to a guy called Al Mitchell at Freerider magazine. He was designing longboarder and surfing life, and I thought he was the greatest graphic designer I'd ever seen. And so I would just like learn off him, you know, and I still credit him for what I've achieved with design and so on. Is just I just sat next to him and I was on a really low pay grade at this magazine place, but I saw it as they were paying me to learn, you know. And I think a lot of kids, maybe, yeah, that's not always obvious to some kids, but yeah, just getting in the right place to learn from someone who's good at it will take you far.
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of like factors going on with that kind of shit these days, because I just look at Instagram as such a fucked up place for seeing where people are at right now, and it's really hard. I think about like my Uncle Glenn. He was a sign writer, and he was like a brush sign writer kind of guy, you know, and one of the last of that trade to do it with brush and oils, and he was doing buses by hand and all that sort of shit. And like I used to go do work experience with him when I was a kid. All my school holidays where we didn't go up the Cape, I went and hung out there, and you just see that one guy, and it was real easy to have. You could kind of have this roadmap to where you were like, oh man, if I do this for this long, like I can be like him. But now you look on Instagram and all you see is every motherfucker just crushing it. And then you're like, oh, it's not like there's this one outlier that if I get really good, I can sort of be like my mentor. It's just, there's just this like sea of success that makes shit look so fucking impossible for people.
Yeah, you're just swamped by it. And I think, yeah, it's easy to give up. And yeah, I think it's tougher to be a young kid now in some ways because of that. Like you're paying a higher psychological price for where you're at, and Yeah, I think Instagram, especially for young girls as well, like suicide rates amongst young girls since Instagram came about just have shot up. All of that sort of stuff is like it's changing how we live, and our culture is being affected by it dramatically. There's some benefit, but overall, it makes you wonder whether it's having a positive impact or not.
Yeah, I feel like it's just what you make it in terms of like, I don't look at it as a negative experience. I've had a bit of a new concept with it to where like I've really pretty much stopped scrolling. Like it's very, very rare that I will now scroll, but I've kind of had this weird theory of just like input. Like I want to control input as much as possible, because I mean we can get as fucking weird into like the rabbit hole of like consciousness and shit as you want, but I've been doing a lot of reading about just free will and whether free will exists at all. And essentially it doesn't. Like because you don't get to, I mean, there's some people can fucking read into it if they really want without me getting too deep, but it's like if I say the word 3, you didn't have a choice in that input into your consciousness. And if I'm speaking to you in English and you know English, you don't have a choice in understanding what I said to you. So, and there's a simple sort of test that you can do to where it's like, what's a movie? Name a movie.
Predator.
Why didn't you say the Titanic?
Because I'm a man and Titanic's too girly.
Have you seen the Titanic?
I have seen it.
So did you choose between Predator and Titanic, or did you just say Predator?
Yeah, I think it's just sitting there. Like there's certain things that you just know and love, and when that like it's like your brain's like a computer. If it brings up a folder, there's a particular like highest level in that folder that says movies. I love Predator.
Yeah.
And I know the argument you're talking about with free will, and it's a fascinating one. Like you hear all the top intellectuals arguing whether it's real or not. It's fascinating.
Yeah, I think that on that level, in terms of like, you really don't get to choose your thoughts. What the free will that you have is how you react to the thoughts that appear, because you don't have a choice in what does actually appear. So then when I started thinking about that, I'm like, well, fuck, like I feel like to be in quote unquote control, you would have to limit the amount of inputs that you don't have a choice in. So it's like, if you are being way more selective about the inputs that are hitting you, then you can theoretically, in my mind, have more time to decide what you want to do with those inputs, as opposed to just being bombarded. Like you can swipe up on, and I guess this is sort of where I'm going with the Instagram thing, is like you got your phone and then you scroll, and that like all the content is here. Like it's already under there. You don't know what the fuck it is. You don't have any control. You might be not doing well with money, but an ad hits you just at the right time, the right thing. You're not even going to think that you don't have the money, or that you've got a bill coming up. You go in, you buy the shoes, or you buy whatever it is. And then I'm like, fuck, you're living without choice. Like you're not choosing the inputs that are coming into your brain. And then if you don't have a certain distance between, or like a level of awareness at that level, then it's like you're on fucking autopilot. So the Instagram thing to me is just like, I want to eliminate that complete random multiple choice of what I am going to see, which will then create a thought. And then it's like, I feel like the more that you can do that, the easier your life will be to have, some form of control, if in fact it does exist. But when you talk about kids and social media, kids don't have that level of awareness, and it's like you're just scrolling, and like you can see something that makes you jealous, you can see something that makes you insecure, you can see something that will give you a feeling of anxiety, and it's like, I'm looking at it as just like this little fucking random Pandora's box of any potential thought and emotion that you're not in control of. And I'm like, fuck it, I'm out. Like, I ain't doing it.
Well, the human brain is now having to it's like having to download so much, data bytes of, memory and information. If we were cavemen back in the day, we probably, I don't know, we took 1 megabyte in a day. I don't know what the actual number is.
That's a good point.
But now it's like, is it 15 gig? Or what, how do you work that out? But we're just becoming more and more computerized, and we're just becoming more and more, just at the whim of what this little screen little rectangle we're carrying around with us is just feeding us all of this stuff. And yeah, I've noticed in my life, like just having to I'll put it away. And yeah, it's like the world is just changing rapidly, and we're just becoming digital beings. We're moving from the analog. We're like an old vinyl player that's being converted to MP3, and that's happening as we speak. And it's just yeah, like where it goes from here, who knows? It's
super fucking weird, man. Like the I've been going pretty for the last like year and a bit, pretty into meditation and like, but mindfulness, not any sort of like, no religion around it. No, I think we're pretty similar in our like views of, I guess, just the universe, and not exactly religious and shit like that, but just understanding like the different levels of like the mind and the self and the ego. And the more that I'm in that, like looking into that, and the more I'm learning, it's like the sort of the path to happiness for like all of the fucking Eastern philosophical, you know, religions, if you want to call them that, is like the removal of the self. Like you're not yourself. Like the self is this construct of the input. So the self is this like, what is it like to be me? And then you create that self based on all of the data that you've been given in your life. But there's like a receiver of those inputs. And I don't think that people understand that there's like a disconnect. And then when you start thinking about it on that level, and then trying to kind of distance yourself from yourself, then to go and add a digital copy of that self, which is, if you want to listen to that kind of philosophy, it's like you're making a copy of a copy. And it's like, what the like, we're getting fucking weird then if it's like, if we should be kind of getting away from the self in terms of like what we think about our, you know, presence in the world, but then, you know, we want to go deeper again by making a digital copy. I'm like, ooh, fuck, this is starting to like get freaky for me now, you know.
Yeah, I think ultimately we're not designed to be able to figure out what's going on, you know, like it's meant to be this way. The actual answer was probably beyond reach. Yeah. And that's how this game or simulation or whatever you want to call it is designed. We're not allowed to know, you know.
I remember like my first thought, like we think about this shit a lot, both of us. Like a lot of our conversations that we have had have been about this kind of shit. And I remember being super fucking young, man. And the way that I would explain, like I don't know how to even say it, but like my thought around it is that if you put a rat in a shoebox and give it no fucking information, no, like everything, the only thing that it knows is what is inside that shoebox. Where's the information that would allow you to make any kind of calculation about what's outside of that shoebox?
We're submerged in an existence which is designed to keep that information away from us. Otherwise we wake up and we would realize what it is. I feel like the world is designed, and I'm primarily an atheist. I've always been a militant atheist in the past, and in the last few years I've become more agnostic.
So what would you say is a militant
atheist is just like standing up for, you know, the stupidity of a lot of religions and like the wars and everything else that goes on, and I'm less so, you know, like I still understand the religious point of view, and I see that there is some benefit to it. It's like a mental scaffolding that's got us from the trees to building civilization. It's kind of like crutches, if you like, to get here.
Is here like a good place to be though, do you reckon?
I think it's inevitable. I think you know, we go from bacteria to space shuttles. That's the direction of travel. And it's, you know, the periodic table is just like the Lego set, and it's not an accident that it's there, you know. And I think eventually we do, maybe when we do figure it out, like the whole thing just unravels. I don't know, like if the artificial intelligence explosion does happen, is that the Big Bang on the next universe? Is it the same event? Yeah. That's what I've been thinking about a lot, is they sound the same, right? They're both explosions. So why couldn't they be the same?
My recent thing, this is, I feel like recently, like going into the more mindfulness kind of approach, and like doing a lot of reading about consciousness, and a lot of that kind of information has almost sort of tied some stuff together for me in a way, because it's like you got the Big Bang, which pretty much everyone agrees on, really. Like, I don't think that that's kind of up for too much discussion in the science world these days. So essentially, it's like you've got nothing, and then like literally all of matter less than the size of a pinhead, and then it explodes, and then it goes outwards. So like one of the kind of trippy things for me to realize I mean, I don't even know when, like, I guess the last kind of, let's say the last 12 months, is that the current moment of time is the furthest expanse of the universe right now. Like, it's unfolding, and I don't think it's this kind of thing where, like, because Earth isn't the furthest point in from the center, you know, so it's not like the Earth is getting further, but in terms of the way, like, there's got to be a 0 point, which was the Big Bang, and then that explosion outwards. So it comes down to that whole, like, determinism, free will kind of argument, as well as that, like, in my head now, determinism only exists up to the exact moment of time, because then it just turns into hindsight, and you're like, oh well, there was no way, if you go back to the origins of the Big Bang, there was no way, with all the decisions, all of the thoughts, all of the, you know, collective consciousness getting to this point, there was no way it could have been any different. But at the exact moment of time, the idea of determinism fades away, because there's an infinite number of possibilities because of the presence of consciousness within conscious beings that can then, they could either take the thought that was given to them by the previous moment and then just continue in autopilot, or, like we sort of said before, there can be that mindful gap between a thought and an action that the self or the, like, consciousness is in control of, and then that moment, it's just like this constant leapfrog of, like, determinism up to the exact moment in time, and then infinite possibility on the other side of time.
Yeah, I think it's just fascinating. Are there different universes streaming off at all different times? Like, you know, and it's important to say, like, no one knows, and, like, you just want to be less wrong. Like, I know I'm wrong, but hopefully I'm less wrong than what's out there. But, like, I look at it like there's the world of bits and the world of atoms that we're in. It's like there's two universes, sort of like a website. So,
what's
like
bits?
So bits
atoms?
Like zeros and ones, you know, so numbers against physical atoms, which atoms aren't really physical anyway. But you've got this classical universe that we're in right now, and it seems to me like, if you look at how a website works, you've got the back end of the website and then the front end.
The interface, the
so,
GUI or whatever.
You got the metadata, and then you've got, like, the browser and the browser experience, and these numbers dictate what that is. And perhaps the world of bits is where we're moving towards, right? So, like, when you upload, and I thought about this when I was actually uploading all my photos to the cloud, and my new girlfriend was actually, like, folding socks, and I was like, that's what's happening with the universe. Like, we're turning it inside out by taking all of our data and bits, we're uploading it to the cloud, so our universe is it's turning inside out, and that's what got me thinking about it anyway. But eventually that's where it's all going to go. So my brother today said to me, all of his go-kart racing mates are all selling their go-karts
and doing iRacing
and doing simulation because they're getting emotional responses out of this internet-based reality. So that's where this is all heading. Like, everything is going cyber. It's all going into the world of bits, away from the classical world of atoms that we're in now. Peter Thiel talks about this a lot, and I think there's two universes, and we're in one, experiencing this one now. And quantum gravity, no one really knows what it is, but I think it is information moving between the firewall of those two universes. And arguably the next 30 years is when we just completely give in to that other side. Just my 2 cents on it.
Well, the thing that for me is weird, and, like, I thought AI, like, I kind of always got to the AI thing at the end of it as well, because you've got the universe exploding and starting, and then that creates matter, but there's no biological life. So then you've got matter, then organizes to create solid forms. There's forces at play that aid in these things happening, like gravity and all of these different kind of friction and things that create all of these reactions, and then all of those reactions have then given birth to biological life. And then they're a biological life that's all the way from a single living cell to a conscious human. And then on that spectrum of biological life, you've got stuff that's not sentient at all, in terms of they're not aware of their own experience, but they are aware and then able to react to their environment. And then you've got like a tiger it's a sentient being. I'm sure a tiger is aware of its experience, but then that's it. There's no deeper thought. There's no what is it like to be a tiger. So it doesn't have that classical form of consciousness that we then credit ourselves. And then there is this I think that recently I'm like, oh, humans are stuck on the self thing, to where for consciousness then to take the next step, it had to be like aware of itself. So then the consciousness, because consciousness exists in the tiger in the same way, it's still an experience that is like input from the previous moment in the universe. So consciousness is the same there, but then there's this self that comes into it, to where I can call myself Jace, you can call yourself Paul, you've got these experiences that are learned and you've got this memory bank of data, but then the self almost like derails consciousness, because then I figure that humans are like this kind of weird junction in consciousness, to where it's like the self has kind of derailed it, and it's not exactly like it's just a weird human experience. Like we're stuck and we're kind of constantly fucking up. We're constantly in like, there's a lot of suffering and a lot of misery that we bring on ourselves. Like when a tiger kills something, it doesn't give a fuck. We have vegans that, what, you know what I mean? That like barely want to kill plants. So it's like, there's this weirdness that's happened in experience when a thing became aware of itself and then had the billions of neurons and synapses to actually calculate those thoughts. And I always kind of had this thing where it's like, you have like matter, and then you have life, and then you have the human consciousness, and then I was like, oh, and then we're like moving, there's like a collective movement that happens that no one person can stop. And there's all the warning signs. You'll hear Elon Musk talk about like the dangers of AI, and you hear it's like this Pandora's box that like theoretically, if we were smart, we'd go like, let's just not fucking do this. It's too you know what I mean?
The Unabomber was that guy, so he wrote a manifesto about, technology and...
Yeah, right.
And, yeah, the human is a very unique species, and then we contemplate death. And I think that's... Our larger brains that's been the result of having a larger brain. We learned to speak to each other. We learned to communicate, and the next thing was like, we started thinking about death. So, then we had to invent religion to just convince our children
create comfort.
Yeah, and so we're just an anomaly in that way from the animal kingdom, and we're limited by the size of a woman's hips for our brains. Our children come out with brains that big. We can't get any bigger, right? Otherwise, our women are just going to have hips out here. So we now need to use like
bites.
We need to put extra devices into our brains, like this. What's the Neuralink, all this sort of stuff. It's the only way we can actually expand the bandwidth of knowledge, and it's inevitable. This was always going to happen from the very first, what is it, like prokaryotic, cells into eukaryotic. So it's a cell going in from a single species with one single cell to 2 to 4 to 8, etc. So the arrow of time is heading from bacteria to space shuttles. It's just that's where it's going, and it's all part of a big movie that we're all in, and we're all starring ourselves. We're all the main lead actor in our own movies, and maybe that's the point. Is like we're just a big bored quantum computer that's kind of convinced itself that it's like one big consciousness that's experiencing itself subjectively. Yeah,
and that's definitely where I'm at with it. Is that there's some kind of movement towards something, and it's like it's almost like. You want to talk about the rat in the cage kind of thing, to where it's like the Big Bang, like all of the things that were created out of that explosion have then been spending billions of years organizing itself to try and find out what the fuck actually happened, like what it was before, because it is this step by step by step by step kind of movement, and it's a conscious effort. It's an effort of all of consciousness to come together to almost like realize itself. And I wonder then if, because theoretically, if you could have a computer that could do all of the calculations are there, like you could literally go moment to moment backwards and reverse engineer that kind of explosion.
That's my theory, is that we're like ants building this massive super consciousness called the internet. We don't even realize we're doing it, but we're just building this huge brain that we currently call the internet, that was invented by the US military in 1975, and it's just expanded. And the internet's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and countries and borders are less and less important. Real go-karts are less important than artificial go-karts on a screen. But if you're an artificial intelligence that is hyper smart, like knows everything, that's an inert position. There is nothing fun about knowing everything and being one consciousness. So if you were to create your own reality, it probably would look like this, right? Like if you were a supercomputer that was like, I'm bored, I want to go and make a fake world where I can separate myself into 7 billion different consciousnesses and create stuff. It probably would look like this. How does those first cells, like the flagellum that sort of propels the first single-celled organism, it has like 36 parts that move like a motor. It's an outboard engine. How the fuck did that outboard engine get invented? Scientists still can't point out, where that first outboard engine came from that propelled the first cell. It's 36 pieces. You can't reduce the pieces in that motor to anything less. So how did it evolve? Right? Like how did the first outboard motor on a cell, that's just basically like a little string that spins, they still don't know how that. Did you have half a motor?
Yeah.
And I'm an atheist, or I'm agnostic, but I still look at it and go, yeah, like that's an answer that I'd love to have. I'd love to see someone answer that. And I just think, we're just, when someone invents like, oh, I've just invented uranium, or I just discovered uranium. No, you didn't. That's been programmed into the game. Yeah. It's the yellow brick road. You just happen to be the guy.
You're the dude that found it.
Yeah, and we're just building a big Lego set. And eventually we just build it so well that it needs to be disassembled. And then the next universe comes in. And we all got to experience this thing called life instead of being a bored computer in white space.
There's so many fucked up ways that you can go into it as well too. And again, it's kind of that you're trying to derive everything from this crazy lack of information to where I remember last year, dude, I was looking into the whole fucking dimensions thing, and when you look at, there's YouTube videos that it sounds fucking rudimentary, but people don't understand what a 3-dimensional universe is. And then you've got like a one-dimensional universe, you've got a 2-dimensional universe, and then you've got a 3-dimensional universe, which is what we live in, but we can only see in 2 dimensions, and a thing that is in a 2-dimensional world can only see in 1 dimension. And then once you go into 4 dimensions, all shit breaks loose. Nothing can be even remotely similar. If you exist in a 4-dimensional plane, there is no corner that you can't see around. There's no, you are everything. It's fucking crazy. And these are mathematical things that exist within whatever the fuck we're in. This box that we're in, we can figure out these different kind of phenomena, but we're stuck. We're completely stuck.
I think the world is virtual. I think science is just catching up to the fact that, Donald Hoffman, he's a top, mathematician, physicist. His theories are incredible, and someone the likes of Sam Harris is interviewing him. So, and Sam Harris is a very logical thinker.
Do you listen to much of his stuff?
Tons.
Yeah.
Everything.
Have you got his Waking Up app? That's what I use, actually.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris, and all those guys. I find it fascinating. It keeps my mind entertained, and I just love those debates that I see. I love Peter Thiel. I reckon he's not as well known, but he's very smart.
He's more of a money guy, right?
No, he started PayPal with Elon Musk, and he's just a really smart dude. I wouldn't say he's motivated by money, but he's just.
I thought he was just more of a business kind of guy.
I mean, he's like an Elon Musk in that he's just, I think just very very smart about, investing in things and like, what's an idea? How do you take an idea to the world and make a positive impact on the world? More so than like, can I buy a Ferrari tomorrow? Sort of a guy.
Yeah.
So I love listening to all that stuff, and ultimately though, I just don't think that we're in a system that's going to allow us to know it all. I'm not a physicist. I'm just an armchair scientist who just ponders about this stuff. And like, I've been through a lot of pain and anguish in my life, and I find listening to all those videos and those conversations really kind of, for some reason, it makes me feel better about the world, trying to crawl closer to the truth. And like the CERN thing where they're smashing protons together. Like, as a kid, I wouldn't give a shit about that, but now that I'm older, I'm like, what the hell are they actually doing? I have no idea. I couldn't explain it, but I find it fascinating, and I love trying to figure out like what they're trying to do and learn. So yeah, like all of that, and a lot of this is going to happen in our lifetime. Our kids probably won't be driving cars. Like so much is about to happen, and I think we've got a really good front row seat to where the future's headed, and it's just fascinating just watching the world right now. It's a really, like, change is coming in hard, very hard, like this COVID thing. And
dude, the world changed fucking quick, man. Quick. February, world was normal.
Yeah,
I was in Bali in February, not giving a fuck, and now the world is different.
I mean, like, no one knows where this is going to go or how it's going to be in the future, and whether we're going to be able to get on an airplane again. I got no answers for it or explanations for it. We just got to go with it, and it's been beneficial for a lot of different industries. It's been funny watching people that are getting on their Mountain bikes. Like, mountain biking is just going like that,
insane.
And so people are like doing stuff. There's people working from home that never did it. A lot of bosses who are going, I think I will let you work from home. I don't need to supervise you every single day. And so I think there's a lot of positive change coming from it. And the flu's always been that thing where, like, why do we all have to get this thing for 4 weeks every single year that just knocks us out? Like, it was always something that bugged me, because I used to get it as well, like, all the time. Like, and I didn't have a flu this year, so like, that's cool. And maybe we'll be more aware.
Dude, you know what's fucking crazy? I haven't had the fucking flu either at all. Like, I haven't been sick this year, and this is like the year of the world getting sick. I haven't even thought of that yet.
Well, when you travel to Asia, like, they've been wearing masks for decades, so they're much more aware of, close proximity and etc. But where this goes, no one knows. And I think what will happen is this is the new normal in a lot of ways. This is not going away anytime soon. It's just going to be slightly subdued. And people getting out and, going for a bike ride or a kayak or whatever it is, it's probably, we just need to focus on that and, like, enjoy living again. It's
weird though, like, I'm not a guy that believes in the, what do they call it, those weird people? The globalist regime. Like, I don't know if I believe in any of that shit. Like, it's so easy to say, like, oh yeah, we've got 2, it must have been 1 + 1. It's very easy to do that when you kind of look back at something, and it's like COVID, oh, everyone's having to do this is the control that they want, right? But I kind of just come back to that whole argument of, like, whatever it is at the present moment kind of does come down to determinism, and there is this force that is unbeknownst to all of us that pushes everything in a certain direction. It is we are the sum of every experience that's ever happened. So it's like, to me, when people want to do, like, oh, Donald Trump and the global elite, it's like, who the fuck has this kind of pull over, like, all of human consciousness? And this year, man, I feel like I really started seeing it more than ever. In the first thing that really fucking wigged me out, dude, was the bushfire thing, because I went, oh, we live in meme culture. Our culture is a meme now. Whatever the meme is that is going around, there's, like, you were a brand guy for a long time. You wanted to, well, still a brand guy. You wanted to capture the imagination, get as many people thinking the same thing as possible at one time, and then attach a product to that, which then pushes your business forward. So like, could you ever have imagined that in one day a fucking dance on TikTok could be done by almost every Western kid in the world in one day?
Yeah, I think it shows where the world's just getting so much smaller, and it is fascinating, and what's coming next, and I just didn't foresee any of this, and it's like wars won't be fought kinetically anymore; they'll be fought virtually. Like you just take out someone's internet connection, and that like how many people would live for 3 weeks without the internet?
Yeah, it'd be a
like
struggle.
that's the way world wars are going to be fought now. The fact we've got aircraft carriers and tanks, it's irrelevant. Those days are done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The whole thing with simulation theory is such a mind fuck too, because once you really dive into the numbers of it, and if you sort of just follow from, okay, we've got a PlayStation 4, graphics are pretty fucking cool. There's some shit on there where, what really was a trip to I've got a sim and I got iRacing, so like it's fucking dope. But there was once they started doing the iRacing shit, or the F1 2020 for the virtual GPs, I'd see the onboard come up on Instagram, and it's like the exact same view that you get with the onboards on a real car. Man, I couldn't tell the difference. I'd literally have to look at hashtags at the resolution on my phone. I'd have to look at hashtags to see if it had esport. And I was like, is this an old clip? Is this real? Is it not real? So when you follow those lines of 2020, already fucking close. Let's say 2050, there's going to be, would you think that if you follow the timeline from the, Sega Genesis or Nintendo 64 or Atari to 2020, and then you look at that curve, right? As in the curve of rate of improvement towards a lifelike representation, that curve is fucking insane, man. And then it's just going to hit that point where it's just vertical, and every year it just goes up, and that's how those kind of curves work. Like, this isn't like a weird out there thinking. So it's like, at what point do we hit lifelike realism, full virtual?
Ray Kurzweil predicted 2029, and he's one of the he was a child genius, and I think he invented Moore's law. Or no, so it would have been Moore, I guess. But he uses Moore's law to describe, transistors' ability to double their, capacity.
Their capacity, yeah.
Yeah. So I think he uses that analogy and a couple other ones to predict that, something like the singularity, they call it, where like we have runaway intelligence explosion. He's saying 2029. I think don't quote me on it, but I think 2029 was his guess. It might be 39, but
either way, it's
going to be
just
happening
around the corner.
It is that's like that. So. Yeah. God knows what's going to happen then, and
where do you want to be for that?
I just want to be riding my BMX bike. I want to be painting something. I just want to I just want to be doing fun, hanging with my kids, teaching them to kick a ball and telling them that's the moon. We landed a space shuttle on that, we didn't land a space shuttle, but we landed something on that, and doing what you love. There's nothing. We're not going to be able to control this. It's coming. So there's nothing. There's no prepping. There's no, there's a lot of people who've got some fancy nuclear bunker in New Zealand. I think if you're a billionaire, maybe set that up. Otherwise,
just in case, because you can.
Because you can do it. But I mean, the cool thing is we get to actually watch it happen, and hopefully it's not. I mean, it might be a good thing. There's the analogy that we're like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. Is that what's happening? I don't know.
I mean, when you think about it, it's like, what technology would you do away with right now? In terms of, I mean, we went camping Friday night. And then before I came here, I went home, laid on my bed for 20 minutes. And I was just like, oh, fucking yes. Give me a bed. I love being in my swag and I love camping. But that's a technological upgrade. Hot shower, internet, coffee machine. There's not that much technology that you want to do away with. So it's like, if you follow that logic, does it make, who just draws the line? They're like, no, that's it, no more technology. It's like, well, every other bit of technology has kind of made your life better to this point. Because I wouldn't say I'm a person that's excited about AI. There's definitely, I guess just the condition of what it is to be a human would completely change.
Well, the beginning of it is this neural lace stuff that's coming. So if you're a supercharged human, so let's say you've had the surgery that makes you now, you've gone from a V6 to a V8 with a turbocharger. So your ability to think and get a job done is now. So you're a post-human. Well, we're already technically all post-human with phones, but this is another step up. So you're one of the upgraded ones because you've got that technology. So that's coming. And if it's not the Americans, it's the Chinese or it's the Russians. So someone's going to do it, and so it's a race to the.
And that's what makes me think about this whole consciousness just has an agenda of its own. Since the beginning of time, whatever the fuck has gone on has collectively. There has been some kind of collective effort in a direction, and it's to where we can't even stop it. Everyone, you got Elon Musk, arguably probably the apex human. There's probably not many dudes that have done what he's done in the physical realm of being a human, and he's saying this isn't a great idea. Doesn't matter, it's gonna happen. So that makes me think that there is just this crazy push that nobody is in control of.
Well, I mean, if you listen to Sam Harris, he's like, it's actually feasible to have a nuclear strike as a possibility on another nation that gets the first AI. It would actually be at least something you would have to consider. Because if San Francisco gets it first, then China's nuking them. If Shanghai gets it first, then...
You wonder, though, if, let's say San Fran, is the point where Skynet goes live, do you think that AI, how long would it take that AI to then shut down whatever the fuck China wanted to do?
My theory is a smart AI would not reveal itself, and it would put a little pawn down to say, oh, here I am, but it's already, it may already be around now. I would actually, and I've never heard this mentioned on any podcast, but who's to say the AI is not already here, right? And maybe it's already got our universities and our entertainment system, because that's what you go to, right? If you look at this sort of snowflake progressivism, are they preparing us for robots? Is that why this, group identity politics is coming in, because the robotic population are now coming in, and so you have to secure universities first, then you get Hollywood, so you're just laying the groundwork for some sort of cyber consciousness that's supersedes the current human, I'm guessing putting it. Maybe it's a good movie.
Yeah. No, you're right though, because it's very rare that you would get any kind of war. Let's say we're fighting an analog war. There's not really an analog war where you're going to go in without an intelligence, without operatives that have been in the location, or you send small, in terms of just an attack based on the art of war. You're never just going I'm here, what's up, we're doing it. It's always a slow infiltration, stay undetected.
If you were a smart AI, you would just be sitting in the background, and you'd build a little fake one, and you'd convince the humans that, we just discovered over here, but all the time that was at the back, taking over the culture war. If you win the culture war, you win the broader war.
Well, that's what's crazy with the whole meme culture, man. I've never the bushfires were terrible, and I mean, I've said it on here a bunch of fucking times, but it was literally, it took over Western collective consciousness for a couple months, right? In a way that I don't think I've ever seen anything like that happen. I was getting calls from people all over America that were super concerned, watching the news, Australia's fucking this, Australia's that, the money that was raised, and then when you get to the ground level, just people that were just so vehement and so fucking emotional and charged about this issue that it's fires, you know what I mean? It's just it's a very natural thing. Australia has been on fire before. Obviously it was bad, but there was just to me it was just this new level of public, it just took over the group think. And then you go into COVID, that just fucking was insane. And then when you look at the numbers, it's I don't want to get into the efficacy of lockdown and blah, whatever, but in terms of the numbers versus other shit that's going on, and was UNIT around during the SARS thing?
Yeah, so it came out during the swine flu
Swine flu, right?
happened
Yeah.
in 09,
Yeah.
and then
You guys
I
did
made unit
campaigns around
swine
that.
flu mask. You know what? I actually brought one.
No shit.
This is so yeah. I thought this might come up. So this
I remember that.
I
shit.
made this in 2009. So that's a unit swine flu mask. So
Because you did like a full ad campaign in Tokyo, wasn't it? Like on a billboard.
no. So I remember my firstborn son was born, and I was watching the news. I had him in my arms, and I was watching. His name's Bo, and I was watching the news, and it was like swine flu is going to kill us all, and I'm like, and I love looking at how the media use propaganda. As a branding guy, like I can see, I can read between the lines of how they're trying to get views essentially. So swine flu, and I'm like, how can I turn this into something? So I'm like, what if we launched a face mask that was going to protect us from swine flu? I'll do it as a stunt, like it's a piss take, but it'll be interesting. And I knew there was a butcher next door to our building in Helensvale, so I actually rung the butcher and I said, "When do you get dead pigs in?" And he's like, "Oh, tomorrow." And so I said, "Can we bring a model in a bikini tomorrow to your butcher to take some photos?" Of course, it took him about a few seconds to go yes.
Yeah, bro.
And so Amanda, who I'm still good friends with to this day, she was available. She just won Hawaiian Tropic. I hand spray painted these and put them on her. And we took some photos in front of some dead pig carcasses. And it was, unit clothing releases swine flu masks. So it had sex and fear.
Yeah.
The media love both of those things, right? So if you can do both,
Yeah.
then you're onto a real winner. And the following morning, my PR guy was like, he rang me at 4 a.m. And I'm like, what the hell is he ringing me? And I'm like, half asleep, like, hey, dude, like, check my email. That story had run everywhere in the world, like millions and millions of hits. And it was in Times Square in New York. So, like, they have a big billboard. So it got up on there. And PacSun, who's the largest distributor of, like, the biggest retailer in the world for clothing, rung us the next day because they'd seen it, and they were in our business plan to be in like 2015. So we were 6 years early.
Wow.
Just from a silly stunt that cost, I think, that cost about $1.
Yeah.
I had a spray paint can. We started selling. I thought no one's gonna buy them, but I started selling them. We sold 100 of them, and then my dad's like, "You better not sell them because if that paint's not like legit, you don't want someone getting in some sort of lung issue."
Yeah.
So we pulled selling them, and but it just put us on the map instantly, and you can see the photos if you go online. But yeah, like that was really just a fluke thing that just I thought could be possible and could work, and it just went crazy. And how's this for a story? So you mentioned the bushfires. So my younger brother, who's 25, Mark, he wanted to do face masks for the bushfires, which he did, and then COVID happened. And so he's selling like thousands of face masks a day or like a month. He's crushing it, just selling face masks because of, he must have subconsciously remembered me doing this. And he gets up at 12 o'clock midday and just looks at his Shopify, and it's just, from selling this shit.
It's crazy, eh? But yeah, I look at that and I just think that there's definitely a new thing going on to where like the complete collective consciousness can get around something. And it can be like the influence now. Like, I just don't think that influence was the same in the past. And obviously, I think that like what you said is really important before, is that you can say social media, but it's not social media. It's the internet. The internet is the thing. Like that sort of slowly is starting to become like that is all of humanity ever. And as soon as there's a thing that, because like when I talk about that whole like movie analogy, like why did you pick Predator over fucking Titanic? It's like the human brain, like at our level, for you to have a freedom of choice to pick a movie, that would mean that technically you would have to have access to every single movie title that you've ever come across, let alone watched, and then you would then have to be given all of those options instantaneously, and then you consciously choose between all of those options. You would have seen thousands and thousands and thousands of movies in your lifetime. You would have been exposed to those. So like that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about like AI, is that like we can't do that. We don't have that level of like, we don't have that capacity. Maybe that shit changes with like the Neuralink thing, but I guess that is the next level, is when you get to the point where if someone asks you what's your favorite song, I literally can instantly go, every song I've ever listened to, maybe within a millisecond, I can play every song through my head, and in that moment, I'm free to choose whatever I want. And then it's like, oh, fucking Take It Easy by the Eagles is my favorite song ever, you know? But you've actually gone through every single song that you've ever known. And that's kind of what that shit is. So it's like, when you put, like, you got Spotify, you've got fucking YouTube, and then, you know, like Facebook Pixel, the things that people like. It's just this fucking consciousness. So when you've got the thing that, like, whatever that, you know, D-Day is, where that thing becomes aware of its own experience, it's like, that's the birth of, and like you said, could have already fucking happened, and now it's just this slow kind of influence. And I mean, you can get as kind of like, using hindsight, you can go, oh, but now people are going to be used to being in the homes, not going to work, and, you know, people are already moving their lives into this digital framework. So it's like, maybe the internet's been fucking sentient for ages, and it's just this slow moving thing to, like, because it can't get to the point where, I guess, you go to the Matrix, where it's like, you're not ready. Not every mind is ready yet, you know? Yeah,
I mean, I just think that people say, oh, you know, the internet and technology isn't natural. It's absolutely natural. Like, the whole, from the inflation of the universe and the technological advancement is part and parcel of nature. Nature is moving towards technology. There's crows that pick up bones and drop them from heights to break them up, and you know, like chimpanzees using like sticks, and so, like, they're coming up. They're moving towards technology. So as sure there is time, there's technology going that way, you know. And even if there was a nuclear, you know, exchange and we lost all the technology, we'd rebuild it. Yeah, we'd probably have a bunch of new religions to go along with it, right? Because we've got to invent something. But technology is nature, and it's coming, and there's nothing we can do, and it's going to be exciting to watch it happen. And this whole gaming revolution is like, it's proof in many ways that that's where it's all headed. And I do believe we're just uploading ourselves to the internet, and we just don't realize we're doing it. We're just slowly, when you upload to Google Drive, you're taking, like, if you transfer a CD to an MP4, that's the same thing. Like, you're taking this analog device that's real, and you're putting it into a cloud. Where is the cloud? Yeah. Someone show me where the cloud is. That's the universe. It's like it's a USB drive that has expansive space on it, and that's what the outside of the universe is. And we're moving into that. It's a place that, you know, it's, I think, there can't really be many other explanations. It's the most logical one to me, is that we're just, maybe we are an internet, or you know, like a universe of numbers, and this classical universe is just here to enjoy, you know. And it's like it's all just like a gateway to, like, whatever the next level of the game is. Well, like Roger Penrose, who's an amazing physicist, he was on Joe Rogan recently. So you've got these funnels, like they're trying to understand what space-time geometry is, and it's just a beginning of a universe, and it funnels out. So it's this expansion, this inflation. And so they're sort of theorizing, is it like a funnel and then another funnel and another funnel? And I'm thinking, no, it's inverting in on itself. Yeah, I was going to say, like, it kind of just has to keep going around and around and around. Which is a gravitational field, right? So I feel like we're in this massive football-shaped gravitational field where there's a deflation and an inflation. And it's the Big Bang and the artificial intelligence explosion, or the singularity. Yeah, they're both the same event, and they happen at the same time because they're the same thing. And then the new universe starts once. Like, there's a great expression by Nick Bostrom, who's fascinating to listen to. He sort of came up with the whole idea of, like, you know, there's three scenarios. Either we're in a simulation, or actually, I can't give it justice. I can't remember all of his three things, but he's basically saying we're in a simulation, and he's like the top brass German physicist. But one of his expressions is, we'll know we've reached the singularity when the click-throughs go to zero and the adverts go to infinity. So, you know, essentially the world just starts trying to get more human interaction, but eventually it all just gets uploaded. And it's a great way to describe it. So things like that, like, I think are just, great ways to try and interpret where we're going, you know. And as humans, you know, mortal humans, we've just got to try and enjoy these last how many years? Is it going to be next year? Like, I don't know. Is it going to be Kurzweil's, 10, 20 years? Like, but it's not stopping. So we just do what we can.
Yeah, the thing that I've kind of got to with it all is that, like, there's this experience where, because I feel like I've got to the point that I've got to by going like in like constantly like going deeper and deeper into like this idea of like myself, who am I, what's the reason, and I think I sort of got here from really thinking about like the ego, and then it's like, oh, I don't want to be a person that has an ego. And then you learn that it's like, well, the ego is this kind of... The ego is like I guess, a marketing term, essentially, for a personality trait. Whereas... And it's like quite easily explained to somebody. Like when you really like reduce it down, you're like, oh man, you're talking about yourself a lot, or you think you're better than you are, whatever. You just attribute that to ego. But then it's like, I would have these thoughts of like, okay, so I'm going to actively try not to have an ego. And then it's like, all right, well, isn't that kind of egotistical? So this argument of self constantly, it would always collapse on itself. And I'm like, this just doesn't fucking add up. Like, the deeper into yourself that you go, the more this argument just constantly, it just falls on, there's nowhere to go from here. So then once you start listening to guys like Sam Harris, and then you start going into a lot of like Eastern, and I don't even know if you could call it religion. Like, I feel like Eastern philosophy or whatever, like Zen, the Tao, Buddhism, all of that shit, it's going away from the self. And I've sort of started to feel like the way that I kind of want to live my life now, well, I feel like, before to get into that, is like, the self is this thing that is like, when you close your eyes, it's black. You open your eyes, you literally have like all of the universe in your field of view. Like, it doesn't stop. If we remove the walls, if we removed it just keeps going. Like, that is your window, as like, you're just a thing that is experiencing the universe unfold right now. To do that, you've been given a vessel, which is like this human body. Now, that human body needs a self. It needs an ego. The ego is responsible for getting more of what you want, less of what you don't want. So there is like this balance that you have to find between the self and then the person that is before the self, like the thing that is getting the raw information from the universe unfolding. And it's like, I feel like the closer you are, I feel like there's like this zero distance so at the level of the ego or the self, you're at zero distance, and there's no like the other, what you are before the ego is like infinity that way. But it's like the perspective of you opening your eyes and thinking you have a head on your shoulders, that is zero distance. And if you live in that space, you'll be able to stay alive. You'll go, I'm going to get up today, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to blah, 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 blah. But then that person is kind of trapped in its thoughts of itself. And then you constantly just want to think about yourself to help you get through the rest of kind of existence. But you need to have that kind of separation. But the closer you are to yourself, and so you'd say, I mean, there's probably times you've experienced this in your like peak fucking level where you were probably just running on ego mode, like just constant, you were just operating there. You're at zero distance constantly. And I feel like the longer you spend at zero distance, the less connected you get to everything else. And True. Then there's no space for new things. There's no space for good things. There's no space for reflection. There's no space for introspection. And I think that there's a thing like when people say, like I think about this when people would say like, oh, I was a person that couldn't sleep. And essentially like, what are you doing when you sleep? You're losing consciousness. So if like what you're experiencing inside the room of consciousness is self, when you can't sleep, it's like the self is not letting you become unconscious. It wants to stay there. It wants to stay in control. So you're in this kind of like fear survival mode where like the self won't even fucking let you sleep. So there's some real destructive shit that's going on there if it won't let you get to a point of being like unconscious. So now like what I've kind of derived is, I guess, even just my own personal meaning of life is like, okay, understand the self as this separate thing, and then there's this what you kind of really are before thought, like the interpreter of the raw data of the universe. And it's like you need to have you need to be in check with yourself enough to where like you can peace out. Like you can practice mindfulness where you're like not your ego, you're not any thoughts about self, and then you can just be there. And I feel like if you are comfortable to be in that mode as well as be here, that's like kind of the balance. And then aside from that, like you're really just a vessel. Like you're a part of a group think. You're a part of like a consciousness. We're all experiencing this. It's a subjective experience of reality, but we're all in the same base level reality.
Can you get to a point where you can remove every thought? Like I've tried meditation and I really want to learn more about it, but like the idea of being able to zero your mind out and like recognize a thought coming into it, like I've really struggled. Like my brain's just, I can't get it to just chill. Like I wish I could, but can you get to that point where you can literally just, how long can you hold that?
I was going to say like, that's probably the thing. The weird thing is though, is that I don't think that you can put a value on time in that.
Yeah, because time goes away.
It's not the same. Yeah, time's not the same thing. Like, have you ever done mushrooms?
Yeah.
And been like, literally been a feeling, and then that's all you are, and then you kind of, what fucks it up is thinking about how good it is. You're like, oh wow, I'm feeling this feeling. I am this feeling, and then thought comes in, and then it removes you from it. Have you ever had an experience that's kind of like that?
Yeah, I know what you're getting at. I think all those different chemicals have different impacts and highs and lows, and you know, like nothing comes. You can't go up without coming down. Yeah, I think, and just on like all those sort of like, you know, like drugs are now coming into reality as being, you know, something that they're exploring more as like other, you know, benefits of it. And I guess that ties into consciousness, it ties into the meditation and what you're talking about. It's a new area for me. I haven't done a lot of study of that, but...
Man, honestly, like we could talk way more about it off here, but like, yeah. So to answer your question, yes. Essentially, like, it's already there. Like, I think one of the things that really helped me to like kind of get to more of those states where you're not really thinking. Now, what I'd say is like there's not a lot of times where I'm no thought completely. There's probably periods of maybe like, you could say like 20, 30 seconds. But what I think that I do quite regularly, like basically now every time I'm doing any kind of practice like that, I would say instead of juggling cups on Earth, I'm juggling cups in a space shuttle. And I can kind of like, you just give it a little tap and it comes back to you, and then you can push that one away, and you've got a lot more space.
Yeah.
There's no gravity, like things don't have the same level of like weight to them. So I think that's probably the state that you get to more. But then there's definitely, it sounds kooky as fuck, dude, but there's definitely times where like you are a feeling. That's it. You're not any like. And I think that a good way to think about it is like, have you ever had a toothache where your tooth is hurt so bad, you are a toothache? Like we've all, and I think that's the thing is like, you've kind of, it's not so much as like, you don't have to spend like fucking thousands of hours meditating. Like if you've got the right information about it, you could just do it and you're there because you just understand that it's already like, there is a version of everybody that is receiving this raw data from the universe, and then a thought comes into the head, and then you just think that thought. The place that you're trying to get to, you kind of already are. So you sort of got to think about the process as doing less than what you do, not more than what you do. You just, a thought come, gone.
I think I'm going to benefit a lot from this. I need to investigate further.
Dude, just the waking up at man with Sam Harris.
Yeah, I haven't done enough of the, like, I tend to kind of like scour the topics I like the most, but yeah, I know he's very big on meditation, so yeah, I definitely. But
there's no hokey shit with him.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is the perfect thing.
I think he's the perfect guy to do that because he is so, you know, like, yeah, when you see where he's come from with his sort of debates around creation and evolution, etc. It's good to have someone of his nature and his caliber doing that investigation and talking about it. And he's open about doing, you know, drugs and ayahuascas and all this sort of stuff. So yeah, it's, you know, and without podcasts, we wouldn't have, you know, like I wouldn't have come across him or Christopher Hitchens or any of those guys. I probably would have never come across these people that have, you know, helped shape my thinking, you know, and those people are just through this like this long form conversation, we're able to get, you know, mine into the details and discuss things, you know, in more you know, detail and just more theories and debate. So
all it is, man, is like the self just doesn't want to let go of you. Like it shouldn't, like that's the kind of thing. But I think that we're just taught to be so individual these days. Like you can completely survive as an individual, and I think that's been like this thing that's created so much suffering in people, is that people just put so much stock in like the self, when the self is only a thing that exists in the past. It's not actually a real thing. It's not actually a physical form. Like you kind of just you sitting there right now.
Yeah, I find it fascinating, and like just looking back and, you know, like the years running unit and having like, you know, 280,000 emails a day, I would just go to Nimbin once a month and just like line a river on my own and with some cows, and like that would be that was my way of like trying to deal with it.
Yeah,
and it was actually quite effective, believe it or not. But yeah, trying to find that way to turn off, you know, and I think, it doesn't get a lot of discussion, and there's probably different ways of doing it. Like, you know, even meditation for me might be riding my bike. Like I find that
it is for sure.
That is like a form of it, and it sort of releases, you know, that tension of whatever is in your mind, and just getting in the fresh air. Like you went camping. Like I find more and more just going for like a mountain bike ride or what have you. Like you just get to get away from these computers and you know, keyboards, etc. And I think maybe we're waking up to that now, and we're, you know, like there's a little bit of resentment for this technology now. It's sort of coming in, going, do we really want to rush to this AI, or do we want to like take our time, you know? And but it's it's a fascinating topic. I love it.
Yeah, well, I think that whole thing of like surfing's meditation. I do jiu-jitsu. That's meditate. Like the thing that feels good for the human brain is to be in the moment. Like there's studies that have proven that the closer you are to the moment without thought, the human brain is working better than when it is distracted. So like when you're riding a mountain bike, like for me, I rode downhill forever, and it's like you just can't think anything else. You're gonna get fucked up. Like there's real consequences. So it forces you into this meditative state. So I think that that's kind of what's going on, is that the reason why we love motocross and the reason why we love BMX and we love these extreme things like surfing, and like all the people that we interact with and we talk to, everybody that's been on this fucking podcast basically are like people that have a connection to that feeling of they're doing this thing that lets them have no thought because there's physical consequences to doing that. So like all that you're doing in meditation is like, you just don't need a bike. You don't need jiu-jitsu. Yeah. You don't need surfing. You can just get there. And then that place I think the power in that is like, it's always with you then. I just got injured badly. So that was actually like kind of one of the gnarliest things, is like pretty much the whole fucking time I was hurt, like I was just doing days where I'd just be like doing an hour and a half, just sitting down, going through it. And it's like, I haven't been negative because it's so easy to see that shit coming now. Mm-hmm. Like there's a guy that I don't like and I fucking see him around, and then you'd get these feelings, and then it was from this shit, I'm just like, oh, I don't need that. Like I literally can choose not to feel like that. Haven't felt an ill thing towards that person. And now it's to the point where I'm like, I just don't need that ever again. Like I literally can choose to never think negatively about that person again. That's fucking huge, man. Because like everybody's got that kind of resentment and that kind of, you know, those weird that capability to like harbor those fucking weird feelings. Yeah,
you're just completely surrendering to your thoughts, and I feel like I find the same thing when I have a negative thought. Like if I can just think of something positive that's happening in my life, it's not hard to just pick something and just focus on that, and you catch yourself like. And you get better at it, I think, with time. But you've got to make a conscious decision to go to what you want to do and choose what you're going to feel. And it probably isn't something you can pick up straight away. Definitely something you have to learn.
Yeah, and the theory, like in Sam's app, there's a theory section to it, and that's the most valuable kind of thing. And to me, it's not. It's just right there. Like, everybody's already got it. There's no, like, you have the ability to, everybody has that ability. And I think that that's kind of what it almost fucks it up a bit, is like, it kind of gets sold as that. Like, oh yeah, it took me years, you know, like and again, that's ego. There's like people that want to tell people that, oh, it's so hard to do, so hard to get there. Or like, oh yeah, I'm there for stages for hours. And it's like, well, when you're in a place like that, the time doesn't even matter. It just doesn't even matter how. I don't give a fuck how long I'm there. It's just good to get there. And I think that people kind of skew the information, and there's always these weird attachment to it and these weird kind of connotations around it. So I think it is cool to, you know, be able to kind of like give people, like, say to people, it's really not fucking, it's not hard at all. And if you come from an action sports background, you're so used to being there. We go there every fucking day, man. Like, when I rode the MX farm on the weekend, like, I couldn't tell you a thought I had riding.
I don't think I could do fishing, because I would just be sitting there just going, I got to send that email, I've got to do that. Things like, I don't think fishing's ever going to work. It probably works for other people. I certainly haven't got that. But or golf, I think that would probably be a struggle. But when, like you say, when you're going downhilling and there's trees coming past, and you know there's dirt, you gotta think only about that. So I think that's probably been a good thing for me as well, just having those sort of sports and being able to completely switch off from thinking unconsciously. Like now you say it, like I probably just need to do more of that. And you know, like it's been a while since I've been on a dirt bike, and I've seen yours out the front here, and I'm like, come
for a ride with me one day.
I would love to. Yeah. No, and I just want to get back into it, you know, and I remember selling my dirt bike to buy a computer to start unit, and like, you know, I've got to buy another one back again later on. But like, I just remember that day just going, wow, I don't actually own a dirt bike anymore. I never thought this day would come. Yeah. In the end, it was like the right decision for what I was doing. But in many ways, I look back and go, I should always have just had one there, you know, but I've, you know, done a few broken bones here and there. Maybe I would have had more. I don't know. But you can't let go of your childhood dreams, you know, and you've got to do what you sell. If you're in branding, you've got to do what you're talking about. And I think people forget that. They get so busy with their business, they forget to do what they're actually meant to be doing.
Well, we should definitely dive into unit. I've fucking been dominating the conversation here with all this shit. But yeah, I feel like any time, like, you've been through a pretty fucking traumatic experience of like having a multi-million dollar business and then not having that multi-million dollar business like with your brother. So anyway, we should dive fucking super deep into that. So you're one of the people that have the photo starting in the garage, you know, like you have that legitimate entrepreneur fucking moment in history, parents' garage type of deal, and then to go to be this multi-fucking-million-dollar deal. So I want to know all about it.
Look, it was just like, as we spoke about earlier, just having an idea of what I wanted to do and combining my loves of art and motocross, and the most obvious choice was to do a brand. And at the time, Fox was the biggest brand in the world, still probably is. But I remember thinking, I reckon I could do that. I reckon I could do a brand like that, or even better than that. And so, my brother and I had $300 each, and we pulled that together and started in Mum and Dad's garage. And I remember drawing the logo, which is essentially a spark plug exploding in a fuel cell. And I remember drawing it and going, that's it. That is going to work. Like, no dramas about it. I even have the original sketch at home, and I just never had disbelief about it. I never once questioned its ability to be what I thought it could be. And
what it was.
Yeah,
it ended up being that.
It actually, we overtook Fox in sales in 5 years in Australia, and I didn't know what an invoice was. Like, I had to go, what is an invoice at the beginning? So I had to learn a lot, and but we just made stuff that we wanted to wear, right? Like, I wanted a T-shirt that celebrated motocross or BMX, and had some branding and some graphics to it, and typography and everything, and so we just made shirts for us. And every day I'd come back from from being out, and there'd be like a little pile of 4 yellow bags to go out that afternoon, and then a week later there's like 6, and then a month later there's 20. and we just eventually a whole van had to turn up to pick up our sales, and then the 2 vans, and
this was all still out of your parents?
Out of my parents' garage, yeah. So we moved out eventually, probably 6 months in. We ended up getting a little shed, and I remember being so scared the first day, thinking, my God, we've got to pay rent on this shed now. And like there was a container coming from China with like, board shorts in and different things like that, and just freaking out like, is this even going to be doable? So it's it's a very scary thing to undertake in building a brand, and we just went for it. And you don't need money, you really don't. Like you just need that desire to go for it. And like we just put everything we could in. I had Red Bull as a client in those early days, so I'd be doing Red Bull stuff, like doing the F1 car designs and like posters and logos for different events. So like I was able to make a little bit of money from Red Bull, and they'd be giving me cartons of Red Bull to kind of stay up late. So we'd be doing like midnight finishes, and it just honestly, like it just took off so quickly. And I think the motocross industry at the time was also coming into this surge, so we were at the right brand at the right time. And Australia is renowned for bringing out the best athletes, or some of the best athletes in the world. So in our doorstep, like people lived in our own town of the Gold Coast, were the best in the world.
What was your doorway into those guys? Like, what was the first kind of athlete that you had, and what was the doorway to get in with those guys?
Honestly, it was just shaking their hand at the events, and just going, here's a t-shirt, here's what we are, this is the brand we are. And they were just like, awesome, I'm sponsored, like I can get girlfriends because I've got a sponsor, you know what I mean? Like it was that lame at the beginning. It was literally that small an industry. I remember my brother ringing me. He went to an event in Melbourne, and he's like, oh, there's all this wind today, and like this is when Luke Urek and some of those guys were kind of like ruling the roost. And he said, there's this dude down here called Robbie Madison. He's the only one riding, because all the pros are sitting in their vans. They don't want to ride in the wind. But there's this dude, Robbie, who's just whipping up, just destroying the course. We should sponsor. And I'm like, sounds good to me. Hit him up. So we got Robbie Madison in probably very early on, I think maybe a year in. And he was obviously going to be very successful and great guy. And so we worked with him. We knew eventually he was going to go to a Fox or a Thor or something like that. So we said, look, whilst you're still unknown, please help us, which he was good enough to do. And in the end, I think Jet Pilot paid him, $10,000 or something like that. We just didn't have any money, so we couldn't hold on to him. But we weren't upset about it. We knew that was inevitable. He's got to make some money off his bike, and we wished him well. Still friends to this day. And Robbie Adelberg, he was like a little kid on an 80 in Freerider. I was going to
say, he would have been young, dude.
Yeah. Well, I remember being in Freerider magazine and putting him in the first story, like literally designing his story. And then I just rung up his dad, and I'm like, can I send him some stuff, I reckon? Because he was doing like no-nothings on his 80 in Victoria. And so
he's from Wagga, right?
He's from Benalla.
Oh, Benalla.
Yeah. So, and I was partying with him in Austria 6 months ago.
Really?
Yeah. So, just top guy. I mean, he's one of the top FMX guys right now.
Yeah, so, he's still the dude.
Yeah. So, people we knew, like Kane Saul was just like a mate, and Matt Schubring was just in Boona. And so like just a couple of those guys that we knew, and we just started talking to him. Levi Sherwood was just a little kid on an 80 at Krusty, and spoke to him, and Pages in France. Like we just, over the years, our sort of, I guess, the level of athlete it grew. So but we were just on such a surge, and so we just got athletes that were just coming up, and we were coming up, so sort of collaboratively we all went, we all rose to the occasion. And I was paying some of them $100K, like they were getting paid. So,
well, that was the thing with you guys, especially like we talked about Alan Hardy. It was like that there was this perfect kind of union between, you had what you were doing, and well, you and your brother, in terms of like you were the design and then the business side of things. Then you got this guy Alan that was like, he's one of the most talented action sports filmmakers like in the world out of anybody. You get that dude from Channel fucking 9, and then you get these athletes that are all on this ground floor of this emerging. All of these sports are essentially like emerging. You've got this crazy level of talent down here. It was just this perfect storm. And then you guys as a business, I think from the outside looking in, and it was, you guys invested in the riders like so much. Like I remember the Dane Searles. I was at one of the unit shoots for Dane Searles when what farm was it? Was it at Shuey's farm where they built that huge line?
Yes, Boona. Yeah, we built that. That was like the biggest dirt jumps you've ever seen. I don't know if you ever stood on one of the takeoffs.
I was there doing some of the filming. Were you there the day the chopper fucking half clipped one of the trees?
I think I heard about it. I don't think I was there that day.
I don't know if that's public knowledge, but there was a chopper clipping a pine tree out there one day. I was there for that day.
I may not have told me that, but that's great. As long as I live.
But there was like this crazy investment from you guys into the riders themselves, and where did that thinking come from? Well, look, because that's very unique for the industry. Yeah,
I think people didn't really give us enough credit for really celebrating the sport and putting back into it. Like, those 4 dirt hits, they cost me 60 grand. Like, I could have put 60 grand into my house or my car or whatever, but we put it into the sport, and we never lost that from day one. Like, we would always invest in, like, we want to help do the world's first triple backflip.
Jed Milton,
yeah. So like, we love that. Like, we wanted to help propel the sport and help athletes achieve, and that's why we're all fucking here. Like, having a nicer car with bigger rims on it doesn't appeal as much as like being able to say, look, this helmet, like, I've got Jed's helmet in my house. I treasure it. Like, that's the first helmet that did a triple backflip on a BMX. That right there. And
but you did have the cars at one point and all that shit.
We did spoil ourselves a little bit. Like, we both love engineering, motorsport and stuff like that. So we did have some material goods.
Which I'm not saying that's a bad thing.
No.
You've seen both sides of the coin, essentially.
Absolutely. But yeah, I think we were really always adamant that we would help propel the sport further if we could, and if athletes are willing to do stuff, we'd help make that dream happen, So till this day, that's probably some of the best stuff we did. Was I can still look back and go, we allowed that to happen, and we had Alan there and yourself filming it and capturing this stuff for the first time. And
I can't take fuck all credit for any of it. I was literally at like 1 or 2 shoots. But yeah, no, it was a crazy time, and you guys really did invest so much into those sports and the athletes. Like, a lot of those dudes have still got careers, today, that it's like if Unit wasn't there, like it kind of was like the lifeblood of that industry, really. Yeah,
someone said to me last week, like, the old Unit was really where the heartbeat of two-wheel action sports was in the Southern Hemisphere, and it's just not there anymore. It's just now just a brand in a shop, and I think, there was a magic that we had that was really just, we got to crystallize it from different places and put a logo on it and put it on a video. So yeah, I wish there was more of that still going on in the world, but
I just think the world's a different place now, man. Like, unfortunately, if you've got a fucking business, get a Facebook pixel and just put bulk money into Facebook ads. Like, you want to, you talk about, and this kind of sucks, and it's not any one brand, or like, I love the South Boys, like, I'm fucking mates with those guys, so full disclosure on that, you know. And it's like, but the world's different now. Like, you guys existed in a time with Unit where the way that you did make a splash was by doing that. There wasn't the Facebook ads, there wasn't the internet in the form that it is now, e-commerce wasn't the thing that it is now. So it's like, I think a lot of it just comes down to like the era, and there was a lot of innovation in that era, and because you guys needed to get that message out there, because again, you could just go and be shirts in a shop, and people, like, there was such a lifestyle that was associated with that brand, but the world's too different. Like, you can't do that shit now. Yeah,
I agree. I think the era is over in many ways. I think like, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with electrification and some of these other things that are coming in. I think there's going to be opportunity coming, but yeah, like that time was just so special. Like the first backflip, the first double backflip. And yeah, just the hype around the sport, and like looking back at those videos of Emig and McGrath, living the dream, and all of those things that went on. Like, it was definitely an amazing time to be involved with it. And it's like, even motocross now, it just isn't the same level of. It's just not as important as it used to be to the average Joe for some reason. Like, you don't see dirt bikes on the back of vans very often. Like you do, and every time I see someone with the dirt bike on the back of a truck, I'm like, yes, there's one of my mates. You know, it won't be one of them, but it's like there's one of my
That's
tribe.
one of the boys, yeah.
You know, and like that was so prevalent back in the early 2000s. Like there'd be vans with stickers on it, and it was just it was a lifestyle. So it's definitely not the same as it was, and I hope it can come back. I mean, I don't know how, but yeah.
Well, the industry in Australia is actually like fucking out of control right now. Like there's no stock anywhere for anything. Like I was talking to Scotty Runciman the other day, and he was saying that they've sold out of everything pro circuit, and this was all stock for old shit that they were basically gonna throw away because it was taking up space in the warehouse. And it's like, that's how fucking this whole COVID thing has like affected the industry. And it's like MX store can't get stock, you know. There's just like the demand now, and it's sort of what you said, this whole COVID thing has kind of changed the way that shit is getting done, but it sort of feels like it's coming back around, but it won't be the same thing
again. Yeah,
it's not going to be the same.
Yeah, it's like, and even, you know, watching freestyle motocross and what's possible on a dirt bike now, it looks like a computer game, but it's real dudes doing it. You know, like it's, what would we do, like a 5 backflips in a row to get the same level of interest? You know, where does it go from here? So, but yeah, it's just good to know that dirt bikes are selling again, and people are connecting with nature, and, you know, whether it's a mountain bike or a motorbike or what have you. But yeah, it's one of the benefits of this time. So,
what was it like blowing up that quick? And obviously, again, you can't say that it's like this overnight success, but in 5 years to be selling more in Australia than Fox, like that is blowing up. And obviously there's it's not taking away from any of the work that got done, but it was a fucking success, like an uber success. What was it like to be, you know, part of driving that fucking ship? Like, did it feel out of control?
Yeah, like I look back at that time, like it was like all my dreams came true. Like I'm one of the few people that can say I got to live my dreams, like, and I've still got round 2 left. So I see the luck I've had to actually have experienced that, and like it was a real roller coaster ride. Like,
I was gonna say, I bet it was.
It wasn't. From the outside, it probably looked like we were living the dream, and there was days where we were. Like I remember sitting on wakeboard boats in the Coomera River while commuters are just going over our head at 9 a.m. and we're just laid out with beers and shenanigans, and like there was moments like that where you really got to enjoy it. And but the late nights answering emails, Skyping America at 11 a.m. on a Saturday morning, like we put bulk work in to get it. So it wasn't like you know, maybe we should have put some general managers on and just sat in an ivory tower somewhere, you know, which I would never do. But yeah, like we just lived in it, and we learned as we went. And yeah, it was amazing writing down goals and then hitting them that same year. Like it was incredible, like what we would write down in a January and then go, we literally hit 90% of those goals. Like, and so we just got into that routine of just smashing it. And yeah, like it was just a surreal moment. It really was. So yeah, it was just amazing times, and also it was a roller coaster. It wasn't all fun and games, but
I bet it was stressful as fuck.
Well, yeah, I was married at the time, so it put a lot of strain on my relationship, and that was difficult. Having 3 kids during it as well was hard, but yeah, I wouldn't change the past. It wouldn't have got me here, you know. And I'm a happier man nowadays. Like, you know, it's interesting to think. Yeah, like I feel so much more euphoric about life today than I did back then.
And what's the reasons for that?
I think, well, kind of like what you've been alluding to earlier, like you're just more relaxed. You take your time a bit more. Living down here on the Gold Coast in Burleigh, just having a little bit more control over my day. I don't have 280 emails a day. Just having a bit more of a moment, enjoying life, you know, not trying to like race to get this and we got to get that sale and we got to do this and we got to like make that phone call and do that event. All of that gets very daunting after a while. So I love not having to do all that, but I also crave when I did do that and it was fun, and there's moments where I still want to do that. And yeah, like I've got some things coming that are going to bring that back, but I just know I've got to keep it to a level that I want, you know. And yeah, it's just decisions around what you invest yourself into and what the ramifications of that investment mean. Yeah,
man. I like to try and put myself in your headspace back then. It's like making millions of dollars. Like, what was peak turnover when you were running unit?
Well, funnily enough, I said to my brother, like, let's make our password our goal. Right, so like I used to listen to a lot of Brian Tracy, so he was like, write down your goal every single day on a diary, like 10 times. And I'm like, I can't do that. So I was like, what if I just make my password my goal? Because I have to write that at least 10 times a day. So I wrote 20 million with an exclamation mark as my internet password for every app and everything. So inevitably in that day, I wrote that goal. Now, having a monetary goal was probably a mistake. My new goals are no longer monetary, but at that time, that was our goal. And exactly 8 years later, we turned over $20 million, 19.997. It was like $3,000 less. So like that goal, we literally almost hit perfectly from that internet password. It's like a life hack. I always promote that idea to people. Is like, if you're going to write down a goal, you've got to put internet passwords in every day. So you might as well, like, instead of typing down like some, blah, blah, blah at 6'9", whatever, you might as well type something that you want to do. So I recommend having that around your own happiness, because ultimately that's all we have. So money doesn't bring happiness. It makes it easier. But that was amazing hitting that target and to that level of a degree. But it was the worst year of my life at the same time. So,
yeah. What was some of like the shit you were just having to deal with alongside? Because like that, it's hard for people to dissect the fact that you might be Paul Everest that's running unit, but you're also Paul, and Paul's gonna go through some shit regardless of what the fuck unit does.
Well, that's it. And I think, it was just such a, like, you're just juggling so many balls in the air all the time. And the partying got a bit crazy at certain points. And that was like a bit of a relief valve as well. If I'd gone to meditation, it probably would have been a better result. So like I nearly died on one occasion.
What happened there?
I don't really want to say too much about it, but I basically woke up in hospital and they said I nearly died the day before. It was after a Christmas party. So
so you sent it.
Yeah. So and ended up painting, like I remember seeing the roof of the ambulance was the last thing I remember seeing. So I ended up painting that at one stage, just as like, this is the last thing I'm ever going to see. Because I remember consciously thinking, wow, I'm going to die. And that's the last vision, was the Philips speaker on the roof of the ambulance.
Wow.
So I ended up painting that as a memory for myself, to just hopefully never have to see that again,
Because I can imagine that, like, when a thing becomes a lifestyle in the way that, because unit was a lifestyle for you boys, really. Like, like you said, you got to live your dream. Like, it's such a fucking, and I guess it's like one of those things where be careful what you wish for, and it's like, you got all the things that you wanted, but they come with so much shit that you would have never fucking known was coming.
I never understood that analogy until be careful what you wish for is so critical. Like it does, it can come back to bite you. So it was horrific. Like it was just long days and like you're dealing with staff. Like I had 100 staff. I'd walk through the warehouse and I wouldn't know people's names. It was just too big a monster to try and deal with. And I did get to see a lot of different countries. So I got to fly all over the world. I got to see like all the places I wanted to visit. So that was really cool. I spent a lot of time flying, just meeting cool athletes and just, getting off of it, and just going nuts, different towns. And like a lot of my very close mates with now, like I go to Austria every year with George at Masters of Dirt and help them with their range.
Oh yeah.
And like he's the wildest human I've met. That guy's an absolute legend. I've met Fabio Wibmer. We're working on a bit of a project with him at the moment, and I still get a lot of the benefit of all those years, having been over there, and even in the States. Like I'm working on a few other things at the moment, so I've got some leads into there, and that was a chapter in my life where I was out of control. I get to go and, hopefully take learning lessons from that whole period and apply them to the next chapter that's coming,
Did you and I'm probing because for myself, I'm a guy but every fucking person is susceptible to the trappings of goals, essentially, or like hitting certain things. Like the more freedom you have, the more dangerous. It just comes with more responsibility. Like fucking great power, great responsibility. Like the bigger you get, the more money you get, the more influence you get, the more of everything you get, the more responsibility that you have to not fuck that up, dude. And like essentially you fucked it up in certain ways, you know?
Oh, we did. Like, I mean, there was, I think, a very difficult period where the brand got so saturated at a point that we just had so many people hating us. Like, it was like hated.
True, huh?
You know, like the problem with fashion is, an old surf guy said this to me in California. He was an Aussie guy who's involved with like Rip Curl or one of those other brands. He was like, size is the enemy of cool. As soon as everyone in that town has your sticker on their windscreen and has 7 of your t-shirts, it's game's up. You can't go anywhere from there. And so our success was our own failure in that way. Like it just got to, I remember sitting in a restaurant in Logan, and like there was just like 6 people sitting down in the same restaurant, all wearing the exact same t-shirt, like same design. And I just thought, what is happening? Like, how does this go? And so it wasn't long after that we just started getting hate everywhere. So
it got a weird association too, to where it was like, oh, Unit's like the Bogan brand. And I bet, like, I always felt for you on a personal level, as like, I didn't know you super well, but I knew you enough to where like you're not a Bogan. Yeah. And I was like, man, how much would it suck to be making fucking $20 million, dollars a year or whatever? Like, you're making this fucked up money, but it's like you kind of lose. And again, it's like with size, like you lose control, and you can't. Like, you got to go a certain way to get money, like to get sales, and a certain thing works. So the nature of business, you follow that. But then it almost seemed like you got trapped in this like niche, or this like Aussie Bogan kind of thing. And I don't feel like you were the kind of guy that ever wanted to be associated with that. And like, I always wondered if that fucked with you.
Oh, definitely. It fucked with my brother and I think, like, we didn't know what a Bogan was. We came here from Papua New Guinea as teenagers, and we were like, what's a Bogan? Like, we didn't understand that term. I think inevitably motocross brands are stereotyped with that. Anyway, like you could say Fox is a Bogan brand as well. So I think it comes with the territory to a degree. I think we didn't help it with some of the photography that we did with models and so on. Like, we probably asked for it a bit.
Yeah, which you just wouldn't have known at the time.
No, we didn't. We just, all we knew was people were buying it.
It was working.
Yeah, and so we went with it. And I think, like I remember seeing like an anti-unit Facebook page had like 17,000 followers. Like, it was like literally, fuck anyone with a unit sticker on their car. 17,000 followers.
Dude, I remember that kind of shit, eh?
Like, I look back now and I just think like, that's fine. It's just part of the what goes on. But yeah, the problem with fashion, like, you can scale a restaurant, you can scale, a drink company, but if you scale a fashion brand, Oakley discovered it. Stussy, like that goes through ups and downs where it's like you can't wear that at the moment. Like, it's just part of fashion. And but
did you have that perspective when you were in it though?
We just were like, let's just take this thing to the universe. Like, let's just keep smashing it and go to America and do all that. But yeah, inevitably it just got stigmatized with that. And that's just the way it went, and we didn't really have control of it. You don't really own your brand. Your customers own your brand. So, but again, like, I look back fondly, like I still see unit shirts all the time, and I always have a smile on my face when I see one. Like, it's part of life. It's how it went, and I'm still got plenty of mojo left to go and do other things, or like life is going to throw different challenges your way, and man, I had a ball. It was a great time for the most part. There was moments that I didn't enjoy, but it's a story. It's like being in a movie. That's basically it. Like, you
fucking were a character, bro.
Yeah.
Like, you were like an Aussie fucking Wolf of Wall Street kind of dude for like a good fucking chunk of time, man.
Yeah, I mean, it was really difficult because you do get like isolated to a degree because like, to some extent I wish I'd spent more time with my riders and my mates and like got out there a bit more, but like we were just trying to run this monster and it was just so difficult. And
it's that zero distance thing, man.
Yeah, I think there's a lot in that. And
you're just operating at zero distance, and when you're at zero distance to yourself, like, you're not in control.
Yeah, look, I see that as definitely a huge issue that we both had trying to deal with it, and we were only 25, you know, like, so it was like, you don't expect that. Like, one day you can't afford a sandwich, and the next day, like, this thing's just exploded, and, you know, it was a crazy ride.
What was it like to have money for the first time like that? And, like, how do you even when you get to that point in your business, like, how do you even get money to where it's like, we're taking $1 million? Like, was there any of that sort of shit? And, like, how does it even get to that?
It was cool not having to think about, like, look at the Bowser and the fuel, like, filling up the car. That was one of the things I remember, is like, I never had to worry about how much the fuel was, or like not filling it up.
Yeah.
So like funny things like that really stand out that I didn't have to think about day to day.
Because you just didn't come from money.
No. My parents could barely afford a YZ80 when we were kids. We had a secondhand YZ80 that was our first bike, and you know, like, I remember riding it pushing it up the hill to ride it down the hill without an engine because it didn't work, and I would just go up and down in the backyard just pushing this bike, just so I could pretend it worked, you know, as a 15-year-old. So yeah, we certainly had no money, never experienced having money, but yeah, it was really rewarding to just go and, like, buy an M3. You know, that feeling of just driving it out of the dealership, and just all the pain and all the anguish to that day was just such an, you know, exhilaration feeling. You know, having a boat to go and, you know, have fun on. I mean, yeah, like, I don't miss any of those things at the same time. Like, just to have experienced them was cool, and, like, to go, like, I got my dream car. And
was that when you got the Skyline?
Yeah, well, that was that. I didn't know that Skylines existed. We're on our way to get another vehicle, and this guy's like, "Have you seen the new GTR?" And I was like, "What's that?" And he showed me the video of Jeremy Clarkson, like, throwing his neck out.
Zilla, baby.
Yeah, and I was just like,
well, let's go get one of them.
He goes, "I've got one that a guy's picking up tomorrow." It was the first one on the Gold Coast. It was the first one in Australia, I think. And he goes, "Come for a drive." So we went for a spin, and I was just like,
yeah, they're bullshit, huh?
Oh, just...
It's like a video game car.
They are an amazing tool for the road. Like, in terms of just a scalpel blade for the road, that car is unbeatable, you know. And I've driven everything, but that thing is just something about it.
Yeah. When you put it in race mode and the fucking thing tucks down, and you're just like, "Ooh, yeah, baby!"
Just feeling your head hit the back of the thing, you know. So at the time, that was like the car to have, and so, like, getting that, and, like, you know.
Did you and your brother get one each?
No, for some reason there was a rumor about that. I remember sitting on a plane once, and I had a unit bag, and the guy sitting next to me goes, "Oh, my mate knows the owners of Unit." And I'm like, "Oh, really?"
What's his name?
Yeah. And he goes, "Oh, I heard they both bought a GTR each." I was like, "Oh, really?" I never told him who I was, but yeah, like, funny rumors would go around about different things, you know. But no, he had an M3, I had the Skyline, and then, like, we had, like, a few different cars and enjoyed that. We could have gone a lot harder and done, but Lambos and Ferraris, I think that's a bit more.
It's like a next level.
Look at me,
deal.
sort of stuff. Yeah. So we never went that far. But yeah, just having, like I love just having a boat, like, just a little wakeboard boat, nothing really crazy, but that was just so much fun. Like, being able to just jump in that on a Saturday morning and just go for a spin, and, you know, take the athletes and your mates, and, like, yeah, it was just, I don't know, like, if you live on the Gold Coast, you need to have a boat. Like, you definitely need one. So yeah, that was really good. And I think once you've had that sort of money sitting in your bank account, it once you've bought that, like, thing, like, especially we loved cars. We're both very motorsport oriented. We're both like industrial designers, my brother and I. So we really had a passion for cars. It wasn't just like, "Oh, I'm going to buy this car so people think I'm cool." It was like, we love what that object is. Other people who get successful in life might have, like, some crazy ping pong addiction, so they buy some diamond crusted ping pong table. Like, that's their thing, you know. So yeah, I think that was really a good perk for all the work that went into it. But
which, like, it's weird when there's a level of hate that's associated with it, and I don't know whether you had, like, a feeling of guilt towards wanting to, like, have those purchases, or the ability to have those purchases. I don't know if, like, maybe you were just fucking on a high and killing it to the point where you didn't really consider it, but there is, like, a weird thing that people kind of have, like, a resentment towards people that actually can, like, afford to buy something like that, which I never understood. And I've been poor my whole life, and I still don't have any resentment to anyone that, like, has shit.
Yeah, I never had that either. I mean, having spent a lot of time in the States and just seeing the difference, like, Australia definitely has tall poppy syndrome, and I feel like it's a terrible thing that our country has that. And so in America, like you get on a plane in America and they'd be like, so and so was on the flight, and everyone on the plane would be like, clapping for this person.
Yeah.
It was like, if that was Australia and they were like,
they're like, oh, who's this fuckhead? What does he think
like,
he is?
So and so's on the plane, and be like, oh, I couldn't give a fuck, mate.
Yeah.
That's basically like,
Yeah.
And it's just so interesting watching that dynamic play out in both countries. So I think South Africa has the same issue actually as that. Maybe it's sort
Ireland's
of like
the same.
colonialization sort of like thing. So I don't know, but sometimes hate is earned. Like sometimes if people hate you, they've got an emotional attachment to you. Your biggest haters are your biggest fans. And I know people who are very successful that I work with today, who are doing way better than I've ever done. Like seriously good, and they get hate emails and like someone's pointed them out, and I'm like, dude, forget about it. This is going to happen, and that person is emotionally invested in you, and they live every day thinking about you because you've done something that they've just been emotionally captivated by. They're your biggest fan. So I got through a lot of that hate through just going, these people are putting in effort to go out of their way to pull us up or say something. So yeah, that's how I look at it.
When you had that ambulance experience, like who was in your life that could tell you anything?
Probably no one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the fucking problem, right?
I think there probably was 2 or 3 people, two of which are overseas. One was in Melbourne. So my closest mates, only one of them lives here on the Gold Coast, like super, super close mates. And at that time, yeah, like now I'm really tight with a couple of mates, and like I wish I'd had that relationship with them in those days, like where it was like, that sort of a thing. So I just didn't have anywhere to go, and my relationship at home was quite toxic. So I literally was just isolated, and yeah, I had nowhere to go. And I'm not trying to play the victim here or
it makes sense, man. Like it makes fucking perfect sense, and that's why I'm trying to sort of like to dig into it, because like it does make sense that you're in this place where you're the head of this company, and like you were more the face than your brother, right? Is that?
Yeah, I think just inevitably, if there was a camera crew or whatever, I'd go and talk. He felt more comfortable letting me do it, and because I'm a marketing person, like, and just like, I guess I just inevitably took that role for the right or wrong.
Yeah, I was gonna say like it just is what it is. Like when you get to that level, like. I mean, it's like a fear of mine that I even have with this. And it's like, man, there's been so many opportunities where like shit's come up that is like, well, if we run this story and if you say this and if we do that, then like we could make this out of it. And I'm just like, I'm fucking honestly scared of that shit. Like I've been on the other side of people who are going like, you got the athletes and the fucking comedians, and you've got like all these, you're out in the musicians, and you just see that there's just like these trappings of fucking success that just seems so unavoidable if you're not like very, very even keel, and you're like, you've got people around you that can tell you you're a fucking idiot, and then you don't storm out of the room or you don't lash out at them. Like there's a certain level of like, just like conscious awareness and like humility that has to stay intact for you to like continue in that environment. And then the problem is then when you add like all the extra shit, and if there's like substances, you've got a lot of money, then you've got a lot of people that, maybe there were people trying to tell you stuff, and then you're like, fuck off, dude, like I'm not, I don't need to listen. Or you purposely kind of like self-isolate a little bit, and then it's like just you and your thoughts, and you and your, there's like extra paranoia gets created about like, people are out to get me, these people are trying to shut me down, these guys are trying to fuck me over, there's like some weird shit, and I'm like, I know you're not trying to play the victim in it, but like I'm sympathetic to that. Like I've seen it. It's fucking real. Like the stuff that you would have had to go through. I see it with other people in a similar situation now, my circle of friends who are going through it, and I try and pull them up on stuff and like tell them stuff that's happened to me. Like I lost my mind there for a while. Like I mirrored out in my entire office. Like I covered the floor, the ceiling, the walls in mirrors, and I look back, I was just sort of going through a really strange phase where I was trying to figure out what the hell. That's where I started thinking about all this, like what is everything? Like what is going on? Why am I in this place? And I got here, all my dreams came true,
and then this is it. Like this is
but it's probably the most empty you ever felt.
Exactly. You couldn't have said it better. That is exactly where I was at. And so like building that sort of studio with like an oxygen tank and a reclining sort of scenario, like...
So yeah, let's just go through this let's go into the glass room. What the fuck was that about?
Well, that idea came from just sitting on an aeroplane and noticing that my ideas were best on a plane. Whenever I was on a plane, it was like, that's where I was most creative. And I think it's because it's like an out of body type experience. So I was like, why can't I just have that all the time? Like, why can't I just have that feeling or whatever that thing is on tap in a building? So how would I do that? And I was like, I'll just create an extra dimensional space. And I thought I'll just mirror the whole thing out. The whole thing would just be like the infinite just streaming away everywhere. And I think it cost like 20 grand, like, which is, and I think back now, I think, why the hell would I spend 20 grand on my office? But it was amazing, like going in there and actually sitting in there, and like you felt like you were going into a different realm. And so, yeah, I would go in there on a Sunday, like the warehouse is completely empty. I'd go in there and I'd design unit t-shirts, design ads, and I would actually be really super creative in there. And it actually worked, which is the funny bit. It actually worked. So I had a recliner with an oxygen tank, full on. The whole room would become oxygenated, and I'd be cranking Pink Floyd or whatever music I was into.
Dark Side of the Moon. Fucking that intro is like one of the most creatively inspiring fucking sounds ever.
I'd be in there on a Sunday smoking weed, drinking whiskeys, other things, listening to Dark Side of the Moon on a Sunday all day.
That album is stoned.
It's unbeatable as a musical experience. I need to take a piss, by the way.
Just go. Yeah. That room, like you'd just sort of get in there, sit, smoke weed, and just be designing shit flat out. Yeah,
so I probably did that for about a year, every second Sunday or something like that, and so it was just like it was trying to figure out how to zero out and create space in my own mind. And I think when I look back on it, I didn't really think of it like that, but it was a release mechanism. And but being creative was what I did. So like I was doing work, but it was actually relief. Like designing t-shirts, which is why I started Unit, was actually the fun bit, and then running a business was the shit bit. So like just going back to what I loved. Inevitably, you can't do that because when you own the business, you've got to like run the warehouse and the administration and the finance and the this and the that. And so more and more over time, my day was just like managing people and managing admin. Whereas on a Sunday, no one could knock on my door and be like, hey, how do we do this? Or what have you. So it was a way to kind of get back to why I started it originally. And yeah, it's cool just kind of relive that and just sort of psychoanalyze it a bit, but that's basically why I think I was doing it.
Yeah, because man, I can just imagine that it won't it's not like you guys did these business degrees, and like, would you, if we could just sit and have like a unit business meeting now of like probably what you guys should have done, like what would have been the things that you should have done? Should you have brought some people in that were super skilled in the that kind of world and let go of a bit more responsibility? Like
tried that. Really? I had the top Billabong staff. I had a lot of them were really good. Yeah. I had like some guys I was paying like $5 grand a week, top brass of like Volcoms and Billabongs, and I ended up sacking them. So it wasn't so much bringing in that sort of, I think if I could answer that in hindsight, it would just be keeping it fun and keeping it small, like trying to build a business based on... The trouble is when you have staff and you have 30-day accounts, so you've got like 100 stores and then they don't pay you for 60 days. So you've got to buy the stock a year before, deliver it, and then you don't get paid for it. So there's this like expansive gap where you become a bank. Right, so the unit bank, and we made a lot of people millionaires through selling our stuff as well. Like little mom and pop short stores would become massive because they were selling units, so which we loved. We loved being able to help people also live their dreams, but then you end up becoming a bank for them because they don't pay you until the way the surf industry works is you don't get paid until 30 days after in date of invoice. So you're stretching your account, and the trouble with businesses that are booming is if you have a delay in revenue and you're going like that, you basically
you've
can't
got to
grow.
buy more stock, but you don't have the money because you're constantly
this is it. And I've got a lot of other mates in business now who I coach through this, and having done it all wrong, it's easy for me to help.
So what was wrong though? Like what should you change to do that?
Slow the rate of growth. Yeah. Basically, don't employ people like that.
Yeah.
Try and take your time who you employ. Have a tight team, like a SEAL team. If I did it again, which I may do, it'll be a tight little fire team, and there'll be 6 of us, and that's it. Yeah. And we 3PL the warehouse. Someone else worries about that.
Yeah.
The accountants are done elsewhere, but there's certain targets, there's certain goals, and there's certain accountability that goes into it. And but you don't know all that when you're 25. Just
I was going to say,
design t-shirts.
There's got to be so much of it that was just you wanting to be the character. Like, how you said it felt like a movie? Like, you're the director of your movie. Like, you were casting yourself, which is kind of the scary thing to think about, is like, obviously, like, on some level, you kind of wanted to be that character, right?
I think I just wanted to be successful, and that's the result of what the success was going to be, was having to be doing that day to day. And like, I never wanted me to be the mascot for unit. I always wanted to kind of be in the shadows of it. I never really wanted to be known or anything like that. And like, we could have gone a lot harder at trying to be known. I feel like a lot of hate started happening when I won Entrepreneur of the Year.
Yeah.
And that sort of, all of a sudden, it's like, oh, that guy owns unit. So someone owns it. Like, it's sort of like this thing that you follow and like, and then there's a person that owns it. Like brands, like if you think of Fox, like not everyone knows
Pete
Greg Fox or Pete Fox.
Yeah.
So I think they did a good job at staying in the shadows. But when you win awards like that, you get a lot of press. And so a lot of hate started happening when we won a lot of those awards. So don't do awards. Just stay in the shadows. No one knows who you are. You can only do that to a certain degree.
But there's like this long game that's kind of like hard to play, right? And it's the same as being, I mean, you could say with this, it's like if I go out and so I've been doing it 3 years almost. So let's say I'm like this dude that I'm like, in 5 years, like I'm going to be the fucking number one guy. Like, you got all this shit. It's like, all right, is it better to be the guy that got to number one in 5 years, or that was still doing it in 15? And it's pretty hard to have that kind of hindsight at the time, obviously. But it's like, you guys hit those crazy numbers, and it was like you reach those levels of success, but then it stops.
Yeah, I think there's only so many ways you can write the word unit and do an ad, or do a designer. So I'd fallen out of love with unit probably around 2012, 2010 even, so I just had enough of it. Like, I just didn't want to look at another t-shirt. But you're trapped. You've got to make an appearance at 8 a.m. that morning at the staff meeting, so I remember dreading those days. Just like, I don't want to go to work. I just want to.
How could you keep it more fun then?
I think a lot of other people that I see succeeding have just got really strong general managers who have started, maybe they've been organically growing inside the company. You can give, stock to your staff, which I probably would do. I would literally give a piece of the action to my top SEAL team, and give them a piece of it. And so, you're no longer just the guy. Like, you're all part of the same decision process, and 6 brains are going to be better than 1 brain, right? So you got 6 processes instead of 1. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So that's something, I wish someone had explained that to me.
Do you guys probably did you have a lot of mentors and stuff as well? Or were you guys really just like you and your bro just flying by the fucking seat of your pants?
Pretty much. I mean, who do you go to though? Like, this is what I discovered. Like, I met the guys that ran Custom and Palmer's, like the surfboard wax. They sold that to Billabong for $25 million a couple of years after I met them. They were the only people I could go to who had run a business that had scaled, and one of them surfed with my mate.
Yeah.
So I got to meet him, and he was awesome. Like, just giving me he gave me an accountant, he gave me a bank manager, and he gave me like a whole bunch of great advice just over a beer and somewhere down here in Palm Beach.
Yeah, right.
And I still remember that day was great because he literally, he could have just been like, oh, I'm not helping a potential competitor, even though we weren't really competitors, but he just handed over and that's what I'm like now. Like, when I meet people and I help people with other businesses, I'm like, do this, here's all the secrets I learned. I don't care.
Yeah.
Take them,
But like, so you guys didn't really have active kind of mentors that you could really kind of go to?
not from a business standpoint, but my dad's always great. And so my dad's a zoologist, so, and my mom's an artist and English teacher. So those two realms are very powerful for certain parts of my life. And I feel like I'm a kind of combination of the two of my parents in many ways. Science and art has always been my thing.
Yeah, true.
So my parents are amazing, and I love my parents to death. Like they've done such a good job of, like we've got three brothers in our family. So they're just the best parents you could ever hope for. So I got lucky with my parents, but in terms of like someone who's run a business and taken it from an idea to like, into big box retailers, who do you go? Like, I mean, it's probably easier now to approach people. But
because you got to think like now my first thought, I'm like, you got LinkedIn. I'm like, you don't have fucking that shit back then.
Not really. Like there was very little, like I went to the guy that ran Brothers Nielsen and he was like, I don't ask me. I want to ask you. How the hell did you make this? Like they were like trying to ask me questions, and I'm like, we just kind of like I don't know how this happened, but like they ended up interviewing me. And so it was unfortunate that there wasn't a great deal of places you could have gone. Maybe we could have tried harder, but again, you're so busy just trying to like keep this business going, and then you got to like go over here and like do this, and how do you?
You got to be yourself too, like
you got to have a life. You got to remember who you are, and so I think I'm sure a lot of entrepreneur types would be listening to this, and I would just say to them, like just be careful what you wish for was the first thing I would say, and try and get some good people around you who genuinely want you to succeed, because a lot of wolves will show up as well and just want to take it all off you. And people who you've entrusted will just disown you in a heartbeat. So be careful who you trust, definitely.
And so what fucked it up in the end?
Look, I think it was a combination of oversaturation as the primary problem, me and my brother kind of just getting a bit over it, and that stretch of financial, when things did get hard, if you're stretched financially and you're a bank, like you're owed $2 million and you've got to pay $2.5 million. It takes 2 weeks, and then that scale can come out. So I think we had some good accountants at different points, but no one else we knew had run a business like this. And it's this action sport edgy brand that's loose, and it's
like
fucking
volatile too at the same time.
Anyone, I mean, people were like, there was a couple articles in the newspaper like Billabong should buy, like a lot of the shareholders at Billabong wanted to buy a unit.
I was gonna say, did you ever have any fucking crazy offers to buy?
We got offered like $2 million.
That's not
when
much.
we were, this is when we were only doing like 600, and we were just like, no fucking way. But because we were doing like a year before we did 100, so why wouldn't we sell it for 2? So there was a couple offers like that along the way, but
because I feel like nowadays that if it was doing what it did nowadays, it would have probably been bought.
Possibly. I mean, we're also very edgy. Like, I mean, some of the stuff we did, like I would never get away with now.
True.
I think so. It's hard to know. We were a very formidable and sort of risky premise, to go to an accountant and a bunch of shareholders and say, look, this brand here, they talk about life is a dream and we are the imagination of ourselves in their ads. We should buy them. Who's going to do that? So that's sort of made it difficult. And I think not being business people, trying to learn on our way. We probably should have made better decisions. Yes, and no, we'd made some great decisions. We definitely
especially it's hard to when like the decisions that everybody probably told you not to make, and when they worked, there's like a weird confirmation bias that would have been happening with you guys, because it's like the most unconventional, non-advised shit would be the stuff that was blowing you up. So when you get into a habit of like, hey, kind of the crazier the thing we can come up with is the thing that makes us the most amount of money. So it's like, what? You're telling me this is a crazy idea now and I shouldn't do this? History says I kind of need to do this.
That would turn me on. If I said to someone, should I do this? And they were like, oh, dude, don't do that. And I would be like, I'm fucking doing this. And most of the time it worked out. There was a couple moments where some shit went down that I, regret. But most of them worked and worked really well. But yeah, we learned so much. Like my brother runs Princess Polly now. It's a $400 million business.
Insane,
and he's the GM of that. And like he just runs Australia. And like... he's got like the people that run that, and he's got a great team that he works with, and he's learned tons in that role. And my younger brother's got his own empire that he's going with masks, so like we've been very lucky with entrepreneurial spirit in our family. And so like I played golf, and we don't play golf, we just fuck around on the driving range and drink piss. But we had a good meeting. We have an Everest brothers meeting every second Sunday, me and my brothers, and we talk about different opportunities, and we share notes and stuff, and we laugh about the past and what happened, and like if I could wake up tomorrow and race it, no way, it was fucking awesome. And I can't pay for that experience. I couldn't go into a university and say, can you give me a degree in all your dreams coming true and then all of them getting removed? Here you go. Like no one can give you that. So learn tons. And I'm going to be applying that. Like, I've just got out of a divorce, so I couldn't really do anything for the last 2 years. So I'm just ready. I'm just at the lights, at the gate, ready to just. I'm looking at that pin, ready to go. So, I've got so much more to do. Like, and I've got the experience now of I'm not saying I know it all by any means, but I know a lot more than I did when I started unit, and I'll be applying that into multiple different avenues in the future. So
was it ever a strain on you and your brother's relationship?
I didn't talk to him for like 3 years.
Fuck.
I think it was 3 years, something like that. Damn, when it all went down, we were so tight, and then we were just like, it was just too much to lose. It was just too much of a.
And did it so it felt like when it went down and you guys lost the brand, like, because I don't even understand if it's too much to go into, then
that's
like
right.
Don't go into it. But like, actually, what's the process of losing your brand like that? Because there's not a lot of people that could even say they've gone through like that even. Yeah,
like essentially. You have a line of credit with the bank, so like the bank is having to like, I mean, if you can get paid up front, you don't need a bank. So I highly recommend that to everyone. And then with the internet now, you can kind of get paid up front with your Shopify. So shit. It's not a problem that's going to be as a bigger thing today. Yeah. But like you're really under if the bank want to back you, they can. When shit kind of went south, we had a buyer in California that had written to us saying we're gonna put an offer in on Monday, but the bank never gave us that opportunity to actually follow through on that. So they were going to buy your debt for a part of the company, or buy the company? Yeah, so they basically pay down the debt, and then they just inject a ton of coin into it and just take it into different distribution outlets. And so, because I always, from the outside looking in, it always looked to me like America's what kind of was the big fuck up for my
you
dad
guys.
Was like, don't go to America, don't go to America. And of course,
I thought that too.
The idea is like, go to America, right? Like the promised land. So that was a mistake. We went to America thinking that was going to be, and I mean, it was for a while. We had Pakistan, we were outselling Metal Militia and Fox in Pakistan. This little Aussie brand, No Fear. So the No Fear chain bought our stuff. We were outselling every other brand in the No Fear chain. Then they went under, and they owed us like $1 million, and they went under. So we lost that. Never see that again. And that was like a really big one to cop. But we were, jumping on planes every couple of weeks to go in between here and the States, and it was just hell. We just were over it, and it was not fun. Yeah, and then you lose like a bit of love for the brand itself, and then it just becomes like this fucking weight on your shoulders. It just became horrible, and I just wanted to get it over and done with. And eventually you just sit down with the bank and you basically explain where you're at, and we just do a deal and get out of it and wash your hands of it. And really, so the brand still had currency in it. Like the Saraf guys are obviously running it, and good luck to them. I'm glad to see the brand still alive. Like that's cool. Yeah. And so I was gonna say that's like the right attitude too. It's like you gave birth to this thing, and it was still good enough to this day still be an entity, Yeah, and I hope it does go on to succeed, and it's a piece of my life. It's a piece of Australian... It's a piece of Australian culture. Well, yeah, it is, and especially from the two-wheel action sport side of things. And, I mean, it is a household name in Australia for the most part, which is really cool to say that. It's like... I'll still go into someone's house and there'll be a unit clock on the wall, and I'll be like, oh, I designed that. And they're like, you what? So, there's moments where I still enjoy that. But yeah, I had a great experience. The ending was tough. I went through a divorce not long after, which was really horrible. But now I'm on the other side of all that, and I'm so happy where my life's at now. I live in a new city. I've got new businesses, new girlfriend, new everything. And yeah, like my kids love me. I get to see them when I see them, and we have a ball together. And yeah, like I've got a lot of stories and a lot of experience I can pass on to other people through what I've been through. So that's really good.
Yeah. Nah, man, people are going to be like, for whatever the emotion that's attached to it too, I think people are going to generally be excited to like hear from you like in this form too, because man, like you guys just went away completely, and I'm sure there's like a lot of reasons for it, but it's like to be such like this powerhouse, and then because it wasn't like the brand trailed off and like it fell off and then it fell apart. It was almost like right at the fucking peak is when it's like a band breaking up off a number one album. Everyone was just like, what the fuck? But to get it to where you are, like you are a visionary, bro. Like there's no in that space, like for what you did and your brother did, and it's like no one can take that away from you guys either, to make that big of a fucking impact in such a short period of time.
And you know what? I created that thing to BMX, right? Like being able to like start with a little hill and dig 2 jumps, like leave the ground here and land there, put the work in and build the jump and then jump it. That was everything to me. Like that taught me how to work for a reward. And this idea of like, like there's a delay with that reward. So you dig your jump, you line up, you weigh up the options, and then you jump. And that, as a kid, building dirt jumps and jumping them I just applied that to business. And then, so it's visionary in that it's just, like going back to that simple equation of like just building jumps. Yeah. And, if you want to be good at something, you got to put the work in and you got to pay the price. And then if you're prepared to pay it, you can get it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really all it is. It's just thinking of like having this vision in your mind of what you want to do, writing that shit down, and then putting the work in. Really, and that's the hard bit. Not everyone wants to put the work in. You can't just sit there and think about lobster thermidor in the Sudan and have one materialize that evening. Yeah. That's not going to happen. Yeah. But in reality, you apply those techniques and you can succeed, and ideas will come to you.
Yeah.
People don't have ideas have people. You just need to be the one on the planet. Just go and come to me, and be the one that just the lightning strikes at.
Well, that's one of the things that I go like back to with this whole like the meditation mindfulness stuff, is that like you give yourself space for shit like that. Like if you're a person that like I kind of feel like I've got this underlying thing of your heart beats without you trying, you breathe without you trying, you wake up every single day without trying. Like there's some force at work that is good. Like there is some quality thing that you're just aligned with that keeps going. So it's like that's sort of one of the things in my head where if you can just make some space for something new, like if your life kind of fucking sucks right now, all your thoughts are negative, you're in this shit space, like maybe what you need to do is, like you said, you just let something come. Don't fucking try. Don't think about all the shit that you've done before. It obviously hasn't worked. Make some room for completely new shit to come to you from a place that it's never come from, because there's just never been any room. That's kind of how I can relate to what you're saying.
And it's shit that I'm learning off of. Like I appreciate that, because I feel like that's a weakness in my life, is like comprehending that. Otherwise it's just pushing a wheelbarrow up a hill, full of bricks, which is one of my close mates said to me the other day, and I was like, that's actually really true. Like when I get onto an idea, like I just go for it, and like that's good in some ways, but I feel like I've been lacking the just chill out. Yeah. That email can go tomorrow. Like, take your time, hurry slowly. I think, those things are quite relevant, but you can go too fast, too furious, and that's certainly what we did. And it was just, like, if I could go back, I would have slowed it down. I just would have brought the afterburners back a bit and put it in maybe third.
Yeah.
And but then I would have been doing the same thing for 15 years, like you were saying earlier. Like, do you want to do the same thing for 15 years? Like, I'd much rather be going and building another one or a thing over in this industry or that industry.
As long as you're not tied to the success. Like, you were probably just too tied to the idea of success. And it's like that if you're so attached to that part of the business, then it's like you're not really going to give yourself room to slow it down.
This is it. Like the analogy I use is you're on a merry-go-round and it's spinning, and you just can't get off of it. And that's the best way to describe it. And if you could slow it down somehow so that you can step off, because if I was to jump off of it, I would have just got flung into the side of the wall. But I think that if you're lucky enough to be successful where everyone's buying your stuff, like that's when you need the most help, because like it's not trying to get there. It's like if you do if you're lucky enough to get there, it's how it can go from there. And I think you can have successful businesses, and obviously people do, but it's
well, that's what I'm saying. I just think that if you're saying that you want to use that in like the new sort of directions that you go, and it's like you can be successful again. It's like I feel like the process has got to be what's successful to you. Like just the act of doing it has to feel successful. Yeah. So like for me, when I do the podcast, like I'm in the act of being successful right now. I sort of don't. This isn't like any sort of goal around this. Yes, and then in the morning I'll get up and I'll check my emails, and then I'll do this edit, and it'll just be switching the cameras and then picking good bits to post. And it's just the process is just kind of the goal. And I feel like if the process of doing it can be enough, that's where that's what success is. Yep.
Look, I think that's absolutely spot on. The beauty of this type of an industry is you can do this single-handedly, or a couple of staff, and you can scale it, and it's the internet, right? So like a million people can listen to this. It's simultaneously 10 million. So the hard bit of more of an industrialized business is that there just inevitably is more moving parts, and it's a much bigger monster to manage, and technology is making that easier. This is why technology is always where we're going to go. But you're spot on. Like if you can just if I was just designing t-shirts and doing cool print ads and making sick videos, and I'd just done that, probably would have gone a lot further. But you just, as a business manager, if I want that thing done right, it's tempting to just go in and do it yourself, and that's wrong in many ways. You want to like Steve Jobs, get the best people and get out of the fucking way. But it's not easy, and the simpler your business is, this is a great, this is a way of life for you. This is something that you personally enjoy. You get to meet people from all walks of life, and crazy people like me, and basically help spread stories. And people it's better to learn off my mistakes than do them yourself.
But I don't even know, man. I don't even know that you could call it, learn. Obviously there's mistakes that are made, but it's like you're right what you said, man. I hadn't thought about it until the way you said it. You just had this fucking experience that literally money can't buy. And the thing that I think is cool about my life is that shit. I've had some crazy fucking experiences that you can't pay to go and do those things. And it's whether it's good or bad, to be able to look back and have any kind of wisdom on a topic that you have this wisdom on a topic that other people just have no fucking idea about, I think it's cool too, the when you can relate to fewer people about a certain thing, you've kind of lived a cool life. I think about Ricky Carmichael, James Stewart, Chad Reed. Those three dudes had some of the craziest battles in motocross history. They probably were at the peak of money. They're at the peak of rivalry. That they existed in this tiny echo chamber that those three people can relate to. And it's you're in a position as or in Australia where it's there's not that many people that could relate to the journey that you've been on. So it's I don't even know whether you should paint it with a good or a bad. It's that just is a rare experience.
Honestly, it was just like a movie. And in a movie, you need a villain and you need a hero or a main character. And then they go through this frequency of pain and anguish and hopefully celebration, or it's a bad ending or whatever it is. But the beauty is you've had this wave function that's gone up and down. And I've definitely got some really bad lows and some incredible highs. So I look at it like that. I got to have this crazy sort of experience where I got to see the bottom and the top, and I'm still alive, and I'm still young enough to go and take that experience and apply it elsewhere, and we are in our own movie, and there's 33,000 days on set, and you got to make it a box office. That's how I say things to people I know who are starting business or just in life, like, get out of bed, get out there and go and do something.
Yeah, dude. One of the really cool things I had no idea that you and your brother were still tight, because I heard that you guys weren't cool for a while, and to me that's probably like, that's one of the questions that's like a happy fucking, if you want to say happy ending to a movie, like what was the process like to getting back to that?
I just missed my brother, like this, you got brother, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like you guys have your own personality, your own sense of humor, certain things you could say to your brother that only your brother would get. 100%. And like he'd be on the ground laughing. You don't have that with other people. Like you don't have that.
There's a certain nastiness too that you can be to your brother that you can't be to somebody else. That's like the kind of fucked up thing. This
is true. You've got this frequency. Again, it's just like you can be good and bad. High, yeah. And I see that with my own two sons, and I see them rile each other up over the same sort of thing. But yeah, I just genuinely missed him in my life. And, we both made mistakes and certain things we disagreed with each other, which inevitably pulled us apart. But we just let that shit go. I just wrote him a letter and I'm like, dude, like, I know this thing just ended poorly, but fuck, there's so much life left to live. We went through this crazy ride, like, and he was doing really well with some things, and I congratulated him on that. And I'm like, like, let's not be dickheads. Let's just get back together. And yeah, he was like, sounds cool. And, it took a little while to kind of get back. And family splits are horrible. Like my parents were just destroyed by that, really? Like it destroyed my parents.
Yeah, that's fucking I didn't even think about that. That would have fucked them up.
Oh, yeah. So it was pretty crazy. Then, like I said, went through a divorce. So, like my entire family just broke to pieces, basically. But we're all a pretty tough bunch. Like, my grandmother went up to the PNG in the middle of the 50s or wherever it was. Yeah, so, like, we've got that DNA. Yeah. And so, we just made up, and like we text each other every day and like send each other memes and shit. And like, like we're probably tighter now than we were before it all happened. And like, we both know we both went through some crazy ass shit that no one would wish upon anyone, and we came out of it alive and able to tell the story. And just hanging out with him today, and we were having a ball, just pissing ourselves all day.
Yeah, fuck, man, that is like, that's the one good that you want to come out of it. Is if you start something with your family and then it goes to shit.
I see families destroyed. I've seen it in like other families that I'm associated with, like, and it's a lot of the time it's over stupid shit, and people like be the man and just write them a letter.
How long did it take? Like, how long were you thinking about writing that letter before you wrote it?
Probably 6 months. Yeah, I reckon. And then it was just fairly easy to write. And I would say that I'd recommend that to everyone out there that are in a similar situation. Like, no one's perfect. You're just as flawed as the next person, and your family is important, and you got to keep those people close, and just be the bigger man and apologize and just acknowledge where you went wrong, where you can fix things, and your family is more important than money or decisions that were made, and you just carry on, and like there's so much more to give.
Yeah, and that, like what you said about it's like a long ass life.
Yeah,
because about that 3 years felt like a fucking long ass time, and you're like, man, there could be another like 60 of these.
Well, that's right. Yeah, so it was really good, and like like it's a great relationship, and we've got like, it's just so good to be able to talk to someone who went through the same thing as you. That's like your family.
That's what I'm saying though, is like when you do something so fucking unique that there's like not that many people that can relate to you. That's a cool place to be, whether the experience was kind of good or bad. It's hard to be unique with 7 billion people on the fucking world.
Yeah.
Although it's like you're invariably unique, but
well, honestly, it was such a good feeling to make that better, and my family just was so stoked with it, and like it's just too valuable. Your family is more valuable than money, so keep close to them,
Yeah. So what's next? Like, you've got the last time we spoke, I won't say anything just in case it's not coming out, but you had some cool stuff that I was even interested in trying out, but I just didn't know where you're at with any of it.
Look, basically when you go through a divorce, you can't grow your businesses. So it's just the way that the system works. And I had to put all my extra dreams on hold whilst I got that dealt with. And yeah, that's been recently done, so I can go and do some new things now, and I'm not rushing at it like a bull at a gate like I might have been, when I was 26. So I've got a few, little ideas that I wouldn't mind putting into the world, which are already underway. So just toying with when I launch them and how I launch them, and some might succeed, some might fail, I don't know, but I love the thrill of giving it a go. So yeah, you'll see some things from me probably before Christmas, I hope, and as I said, like, I don't know if they're going to succeed. Whether they're as big as unit, it doesn't bother me. Like, if I can improve someone else's life, like, these are in industries completely foreign to moto, but I think there's room for them in the world. So why not do it? Yeah,
I'm excited just to see where the Paul Everest brain goes, because it is a fucking weird brain. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing.
No, I appreciate it. I actually, like, as a kid, I was always hanging out with the misfits, and like, I've always been in that sort of realm. I actually take it as a compliment, because it's a fucking crazy world. Maybe you might be somewhat sane if you're seen as crazy, and I always found myself gravitating to the crazy people, or the people sort of thrown to the side or casted away. Like, for some reason, that was always, something that felt normal to me, So yeah, I feel really motivated. I feel like, I've got plenty of things left to do and say, and the world is insane. So there's more to say. Like, comedians love this time because it's such a, it's such a moment in history. So certain people can say things, and it has more amplification because it's more relevant to the conversation in the world. And I like making art. I like making industrial design. So I'm just going to flex that creative muscle essentially, and it'll have different forms and different pathways it goes. And I'm interested to see where they go myself. Like, I'm not afraid of failure. Never have been. And it's fun to actually, sometimes getting it wrong means you can get it right. So that's it. You either learn or you win. So what is it? You learn or you win or you learn. Yeah, you win or you learn. Yeah. That's how I look at it.
Yeah. Well, dude, it's been fucking cool getting a chat. This has been the first time we've had a chance to chat like this. So hope you enjoyed it.
I really enjoyed it. I've taken a lot out of it, and hopefully someone can take a piece of this experience as well. And love to do it again sometime. And I appreciate you having me on. Yeah,
people are probably gonna be fucking bored through the thing, shit in the middle where I was fucking talking. But it is interesting stuff. Like, if you've had those kind of thoughts before, and it's like it's hard to get like a no bullshit kind of I don't know, like, conversation around it too, where people aren't.
Yeah, I think it's a very delicate subject, and people with open minds can really embrace it. And it's certainly something that we're, as a species, grappling with. And I love dialogue and debate around it, where everyone's still friends at the end, and you can just throw ideas out there, and maybe some of it works, some of it doesn't, but it's fun. It's part of being human, trying to figure out what the fuck this thing is. Yeah,
well, I'll let you know some of the books and shit like that I've kind of read, and the app too. So
sounds excellent. And meditation and taking things a bit slower, I feel like that's been my lesson from today. So I appreciate that.
Dude, I'm sorry it felt like it was a lesson. No, I didn't mean it to be a lesson for you. wasn't trying to be preachy, but
I've definitely got tons out of it. So good times.
I appreciate it, dude.
Awesome.
Cheers. Thanks, man.
Yeah, that was good fun, dude.
Yeah, fuck, you're a legend, man. It was cool to talk to you.
Yeah, I said to Jenna, my girlfriend, I said, like, it's so cool to have a moto podcast of this caliber, like, with what you've done here, and like, I think, this is the future of media, and it's good to encapsulate what you've experienced in life in a forum like this. Like, that's going to live forever. Yeah. Somewhere on the internet, so my story will live on. I might die tomorrow, or whatever, but you get to capture people's stories for eternity. And I think your ability to extract that is really good. And you'll hone in on that as time goes on even more, and you'll just be a channel for information that is like super valuable. It's hard, because
I never want to come across like I'm just trying to like fucking preach to people and shit, but it's like I've literally been, for the last 10 years, like, I just was wandering around the US, like I was fucking lost, like, and I was grinding, like I always I love to grind, I love to work, and but that's all I did, and I always just had these questions, just constant questions, and they were all just to do with like, kind of what you were saying, you know, like what the fuck are we doing here?
What is everything? Yeah, like that's ultimately where you kind of end up getting is it's like my form of like just dealing with like medication was trying to find out what is the universe, like trying to go to every intellectual that's ever spoken of anything and just download all that shit and then try and like listen to physicists talk about this and like chemical engineers trying to describe this and conscious people, you know, like, and it's like that was my only way of trying to make sense of the world. Like, like there's got to be more to it than this. Like if my dreams have come true and then this is where I'm at, like what is this thing, you know? Like, and then like that's just what like, and I've never stopped. Like it's almost like a problem.
Well, and bro, like I felt the exact same way, man. Like I just was going, and that's what I was sort of trying to say is like you go deeper into yourself, and you just get to a point where you're like, it's fucking wrong. Like you're not. There's no point looking here. Like it just falls in on itself. It's like you get to the bottom of it, and then the bottom of it is like, oh, I'm just all of these old thoughts. That's all that
I'm... The accumulation of your former life.
You're just like, I'm this old fucking thing that isn't actually real. Like, the thing that's real is, like, the person that's in the room. And then I'm like, oh, you've been through the same thing. Like, you're just this real... Like, you're just this accumulation of old thoughts.
Yeah.
And it's like, you didn't really have control over a lot of those inputs. And it's just like... You go, well, what you need to do is just be like the receiver that's here right now. That's it.
Yeah.
And it's like, go tap into the self and tap into the memory to realize what you got to do tomorrow and what you got to do for your kids and what you got to do to procreate. Like, there's a level that you have to tap into that self, but don't try and understand it. It's old.
Yeah.
That's an old thing.
Yeah, this is it. It's not the direct necessity of the next step. It's like a good song has space in it too, you know, like they let the beat drop, like Tool or Pink Floyd are very good at like they drop the and I'm not a musician by any means, but like just the way they would like delay,
it's like shit breathes
space and the graphic design, like, you know, like you need like X amount of open space. It's the golden ratio sort of shit, you know, like, and that must be the mental scenario too. In fact, that's probably the easiest way for me to kind of compute it is it's like I'm not doing the golden ratio.
Chuck your headphones on and keep talking. I want to hear this part.
Yeah, I've just talking to you then. I feel like the golden ratio thing is really powerful, and songs have music, and songs have space, and good graphic design has space, and having that space gives you a better reflection and a better result, and your brain needs space. And I feel like that's the golden ratio is how I can kind of compute what you've said, and I feel like there's a lot in that for sure.
It's just like you kind of get to the point where I think like where you get to where and you know when you hear people that like I've never had that experience with like mushrooms and shit where they say they have like the ego death, but I've thought about like, have you ever had like a bad trip?
Only
what you'd
once.
equate to like a bad trip?
Only once.
I feel like now when I look back, I wouldn't say it's like bad trips, but like bad or like experiences that in the moment I gave them the value of bad. But all I think it was is just like the that whole ego thing. I think that's why they call it an ego death, is because like you get to the point where you just have to let go of it. Like you actually can't continue being in that body. You've got to just like go away for a bit. And I feel like the people, when they say they come out of that kind of experience and like ayahuasca and DMT and stuff, they come out of it realizing that they were too attached, and that like there is a point where you do just have to let go. And that's what, when you talk about the meditation and shit, it's like all you're doing is realizing that it's all you're like in something. All you've got to do is just step out. And like at this, when I was first getting, I'd say like better's like a weird term, but I started like seeing progress with certain things, and the feeling that I would describe is that like there's like this box that you're in, like a room, and then there's a door, and then when you open the door and then you put your face out of it and to where you can't see the edges, it's like you're just suspended and the world's happening out in front of you. And like you can live with the door open and never know that the room's back there, and then like you close the door and then you can sit in that room and you can make that room look however the fuck you want, because it's you just closing your eyes, you know. And I started to associate. I read a thing, Marcus Aurelius's book Meditations, and it said like, I can't remember the fucking quote, I really should remember it, but it was like, in every man's mind should be like this palace, safe place, kind of whatever. And I thought that was real interesting. And then I started thinking about it, and I was like, oh, that's kind of like where you're going. Like if you close your eyes, so like the visual stimulus is gone, and then you close your mind to where like the thought stimulus is going, then you're just kind of in that room. And then that was like the first thing where I was like, oh, I really should just try and like close the door on that room, and then just like being, you know, imagine that you're in like a fucking beanbag or whatever. So you're sitting down, you're in that room, and then your 10-minute fucking, you know, Sam Harris comes in, he's like, all right, in the final minute of this session, says the same thing every time. And then you're like, oh fuck yeah, like I was just in that room, like I wasn't anywhere. And then you know, the only reason you know the time is because you know that it was a 10-minute thing. Yep. The more time you spend in that room, you figure out that it's the same as your eye field of view. It's the same thing. Like there's no fucking walls, and then you're just there.
It's like stepping back into the metaverse sort of thing that we was talking about earlier. Like you almost like just enveloping, falling back into it type scenario. So like I prefer thinking in pictures because my brain works that way. So like just listening to those like descriptions of how to imagine, like they say if you want to fall asleep, imagine a scrunched up ball of paper falling, burning, and imagine that, and then you fall asleep. Like that really helped me, you know. I think in pictures. Yeah. So yeah, I'm one of those people that need like a visual cue. A rabbit does this, and then I think, you know, like I need stuff like that. So yeah, that certainly makes that sense to me. And meditation is something that I definitely want to do more of. But yeah, it's just getting it right and figuring out how to approach it. But that sort of visualization, pictures, etc., will help.
It ties in with all, like, because you're so into the physics and shit.
Yeah, I feel like I'm just over, like, just I don't know, like, just, you know, running my tires, you know, just blowing them off, and you know, and yeah, learning that stuff would definitely be interesting and probably help convey what's really going on better.
Yeah. All right, dude, I'll let you go. I was like fucking interested in what you're saying. I was like, chuck them back on.
Yeah, no, it's good to.